Hi everybody, how are you? My name is Anup. I'm one of the co-founders of Programming Pathshala. Welcome to this event. I think a lot of you are already are students at Renaissance. We'll be adding more development on Renaissance with time because what has happened, like a lot of companies which are hiring now ask for a particular tech stack, which used to not happen earlier because there is a lot more demand for jobs. Uh, and there are a lot less jobs. So we are introducing a lot more development into Renaissance. We are changing the curriculum with time. And these events are basically helping people who are already doing things, who are already learning DSA to learn development. How many of you already have some background in Node.js and React? How many of you already know Node.js? Okay, little bit. Okay. Okay, you can do one thing. You can rate from 1 to 5. Five is an experienced Node.js developer who is expert at it, and everybody can rate from 1 to 5 quickly. Very interesting. So we are doing a lot of things these days. Okay, 0. Nice. So in this, of course, we'll be developing a URL shortener. It will be a small project, of course, for you can put it on your resume if you make one, and you'll also be getting into the intricacies of things. So many things, so many times what happens about it, we think of data structure algorithms as something very procedural in nature. Development is very procedural in nature, but here we'll be diving deep into things and figuring out why we are doing something if we are doing that. Okay, does it sound interesting? Yes, no? So that will be the difference, that you'll be diving deep into the tech stack when you learn it with Bharat, or rather than just developing a trash project. How many of you have been part of Code Everyday community? Can you type in yes if you are a part of Code Everyday community? So we are running a small community now, which is which is basically all the time people come and say ki, we are not consistent, we are not able to study every day. कंसिस्टेंसी कैसे मेंटेन करें? हमारा 3 दिन होता है वीक में, 4 दिन नहीं होता है ना? 1 महीने से मैंने कोड नहीं किया. So what we have done is, okay, code one problem every day, that much is possible. So what we have done is we go live every day on YouTube and we solve one problem. So we take that commitment from our end that, okay, we'll go live every day and you take out even if that 1 hour, then also you will be able to be consistent enough. So as hiring is opening up, now hiring has started opening up with time, still job will remain scarce for 6 to 8 months. And there is a lot of supply. So those who are appearing for jobs, those who are planning to get into software engineering roles, or those who have to switch, they have to keep practice on. So I would say that keep doing this, keep at least doing one problem every day. Yes. Good news for 2024 batch. Yes, there is a lot of good news coming. Not lot, but yeah, it a little bit like Google ने शायद intern hiring खोल दिया है ना? माइक्रोसॉफ्ट के कुछ सीनियर रोल्स निकलना शुरू हो गए हैं, तो होपिंग कि दिसंबर तक फ्रेशर रोल्स निकलना शुरू हो जाएंगे. 2023 folks are already in the market, so they cannot be considered students anymore. 2023 have to study and work hard, but for 2024 जो लोग पढ़ रहे, my hunch is जो लोग पढ़ रहे होंगे, those who are doing like hard work, by the time you will graduate, market will come back to normal. And normal means pre-COVID levels, not that COVID era जिसमें पागल type jobs लग रहे थे. But those who will be good, they'll be able to make it. For joining Code every day, I will send you the WhatsApp group link in the chat. So all of you can join the Code Everyday community. It is a no spam community in which we just post the links of the live sessions, and you can join those free events live. Second thing is, I'm also looking for some people who are in colleges and who are famous and have a lot of connectivity in clubs. They can reach out to me and we want to make some community builders. I'm also looking out for people who are seniors at jobs, want to teach, want to mentor. So those who want to contribute to the community, they can also reach out to me, and then we can do those sort of things. Bharat will be sending the link here on the chat, and all of you can join that. Yes, we can start now. So Bharat will just copy paste the link of Code Everyday WhatsApp group. You can all join that. But can you take a commitment that you will come to the YouTube live and solve one problem every day? It will, if you are preparing for jobs, it will give a lot of returns in long term. Sometimes problems might be tough. You might not be able to do it. But then even if you sit with it every day, with the practice and with consistency, it becomes easy for you, right? Anish, how is it going for you? You are coming every day for 9 days. Very nice. Cool. Thank you, Anish. Okay, so we can start now. Bharat will start the class. For an introduction, Bharat has worked at Tower Research Capital, one of the highest paying quant firms in India. For 2 years, he has studied computer science engineering from IIT-BHU. Used to teach all his class, was top rankers in IIT, was candidate master at Codeforces, world champion at HackerRank, Quantify, those sort of things. So a lot of good competitive programming he has done. A lot of low latency softwares he have developed at Tower Research Capital. So yes, he will be taking this session, and great to have you all. Let's start.
Hi everyone. So I think we can directly start. I had shared the link of the community. So those who want to join the code every day, they can just use that link to join, right? So yeah, let me just directly go on and talk about what we are going to do today, right? So how many of you actually have used the URL shortener? One second. Let me spotlight myself. Okay, you have Bitly, right? So what we'll try to do, we'll try to build something very similar to bit.ly, right? A URL shortener. So let me just go and quickly. So I have already done some prep. So I've already built an application. We'll be doing live coding only. So as an example, how Bitly simply works, if I talk about it, I can give any URL to it. So let's say I try to shorten a particular link, let's say instagram.com. So I can simply click this shorten. I'll get this kind of a link, right? And then when I open this link, so let's say I open it here, I am redirected to my Instagram, right? This is how Bitly works. Yes or no, everyone? So simply saying it's a URL shortener. So once you give a long URL and you click shorten, it gives you a shortened URL, right? And when you try to open that shortened URL, then it redirects you to the actual page. Yes or no, everyone with me? Yes or no? This is how a URL shortener works. Okay, so let's try to figure out how this application would be working, right? Take another example, sure. So I'm saying let's give any URL here. So let's say I give a URL of some website. So let's say Programming Pathshala website, renessa.programmingpathshala.com, right? As soon as I get a website, I shorten it, I get this link, right? So ideally, if I open this, then it should redirect to my Renessa website. Right now, because I am not actually using a Bitly, I'm using my localhost 3000. So what I'll do, I'll copy the shortened part and put it in front of localhost. So if I click enter now, you'll see that our website will redirect to the actual page that we were talking about. So if I click this, you'll see that it automatically directs to the website that we mentioned in the shortened page. Yes or no? Does that make sense? How it is working? So basically give a long URL, make it a shortened one. Then if you ever open that shortened link, you are redirected to the actual long URL website. Does the concept of URL shortener make sense? Okay. We'll talk more about it, how it works, what are the things that goes into the background. But this is what we are trying to build, right? This is what we are going to build in the next 1.5 2 hours. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Everyone? Clear with the agenda? I have not used any fancy URL, fancy, you can say CSS or design or such. If you are creative enough, you can go ahead and do all of that. I've tried to make it functionally very resilient, right? Okay. So let's first talk about a bit of theory behind it. How does a URL shortener work, right? So anyone who has any idea, किसी को थोड़ा सा idea है how it works or how a general website works for that matter. Let's start there. How a general website works. Redirects, okay. Principle of hash map, okay. Yeah, so but architecturally how a website works or how a particular URL shortened kind of a thing will work. Client server, right? So very basic, if I talk about for any website to function, the absolute basic is the client server architecture. What is a client server architecture? Client server architecture, every time I try to explain it, I try to explain it in the terms of you going to a restaurant, right? So let's say you go and visit a restaurant and you order a certain dish. Then what happens? You tell the waiter, bring me this dish. Yes or no? Waiter goes to the kitchen, makes that dish and brings it to you. Yes or no? This is the standard setup, how it happens in a restaurant. So basically we say the person who is ordering something, person who doesn't have something, is ordering something. That is known as the client. So client is the person who doesn't have the resource but wants the resource, right? Then it makes a contact or call to server or the kitchen, which actually has the ingredients to make that dish. So client is the person who needs the dish. Server is which has the dish, right? Client makes a contact to the server. Server gives back the response. So this is how a website works. So if I talk about, let's say if you open programmingpathshala.com. So what happens? There is a place where actual code of Programming Pathshala is present, right? Our browser contacts that Programming Pathshala server where the dish is and gets back the response that this is the HTML, CSS, JS files, you show it. Does the idea make sense? How a client server architecture functions? Simply saying client is something that wants something, server has that ingredients. So client make a request, server responds with the response. So here two more words are introduced. Request, which the client makes to the server, and response that server gives back. So dish is your response, the order is your client. Does this idea make sense? What is client, server, request, response? Four important, you can say, building blocks of any app, any website. You can ask for a no, you can ask for a repeat if this doesn't make sense, है ना? Because ये absolute basic है. That is how things will make clear. बाकी लोग, I'm just getting 2, 3. Yes. Can everyone be active? How to make वो सब करेंगे. How to will do. Right now, let's understand the theory quickly. Then we'll do everything. Right? Okay. Acha, one more thing. How does this request work? Like where does it flow through? So it flows through internet. So the actual waiter or the path that the waiter takes to reach the server, get the dish back, all this entire architecture around it is your internet. So basically the architecture around it, the restaurant around it that lets you make all of this happening, that essentially is your internet. So client makes a call on the internet to the server. Server gives back the relevant details. Does this idea make sense? Where does the internet come into the picture? A quick yes. Then we'll move on. Okay. So if I talk about our particular scenario, let's look at it. The URL shortener. So URL shortener. So basically internet is the middlemost medium, right? So internet is through which the entire request flows, the entire response flows, and people are able to communicate, right? Okay. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, so let's now look at particularly URL shortener. DNS पे आते हैं. Right now, that is a completely separate thing. We'll come to DNS, don't worry. But let's talk about how URL shortener works, right? What do I want? I want here there is a website where I can put my URL. I can put my long URL and click a button, shorten, है ना? एक button. This is a data. This is a data which I want to be always and always stored. Here, this particular URL. So let's say the URL that I typed in was ppa.com. So this particular URL, I always want to keep with me. कि कोई भी और बंदा दुनिया में, if he tries to open the shortened URL form, so he should be redirected to ppa.com. Yes or no? Let's say मैंने shorten किया URL. I gave ppa.com and I got back bit.ly/abc. So if anyone in the world opens bit.ly/abc, he should be redirected to ppa.com. Yes or no? Agree? Everyone agrees with this? Whoever is shortening, it doesn't matter. Once you get the shortening request, anyone in the world who opens that particular shortened link, he should be redirected to the correct website, right? So there needs to be a central server which stores all the shortened URLs. Yes or no? ये बात समझ में आ रही है क्या? कि why we need a central place where we store all the shortened URLs. Yes or no? Okay. सब लोग को ये समझ में आ रहेगा. Can I get a quick yes or no? Yes, yes. We'll do all that validations. We'll come to all of that. Abhi I'm going very basic, like ekdam simple terminologies, right? So basically, this central place, we'll talk about collision as well. This central place where we are storing all the URLs is kind of your backend. So I'm introducing the concept of front end and backend. कितने लोग को already पता है what is front end, what is backend? So now, right? Front end developer, backend developer, front end of website, back end of website, right? So what is the idea of front end, back end? Full stack is also there. Backend is the place where you have the entire data of yours. जैसे Instagram का जो backend है, that will maintain the entire data set, सारी images, सारे comments, सारे people, all of the things, right? Plus, the backend also is responsible for the logic part. For example, if Instagram wants to show your particular feed, it would need to sort through the entire data. जैसे if I am not connected to you, तो my post will not be shown to you. Yes or no? अगर मैं तुमसे connected नहीं हूँ, like if you are not following me, so my post will not be visible to you, should not be visible to you, right? Unless I have good views, good likes, etc., right? Or it tries to match that, okay, you might be interested in the content that I'm giving, right? So basically the logic part, figuring out part of what to show, that all comes towards backend. So backend, if I summarize it, has the entire data plus the entire logic layer. Does this make sense? What is backend, everyone? Now, what is front end? Front end is essentially how to show that data beautifully, how to have a good user experience. सिर्फ UI नहीं, UI plus UX, good user experience as well, right? So, for example, if data is being shown very slowly, then that is a front end issue. You should get the data in chunks probably from the backend, or what you should do is you can try to show it quickly, or you have done some unnecessary computations which are not necessary, right? So it's not just UI that's showing it beautifully, but it's also UX that's showing it in such a way that experience of the user is very good. Does that make sense, everyone? So UI as well as UX, user experience as well as user interface, both come under front end. What is the difference between UI and UX? Okay. UI is what? User interface. कि यार user को interface कैसा दिखे? Where should the button be? Where should the layout be? What things should be highlighted? What things should not be highlighted, right? So all that is UI. Plus UX. UX is experience. कि अब अच्छे से दिख रहा है सब. But is the functionality slow? Am I able to find the relevant data that I needed? Or am I able to click and quickly go to some other web page? Or click and go to another part of the website? All this comes under UX. Is समझ में आ रहेगा? कि interaction, when user is doing interaction with this, how it is working, right? Responsiveness is a little bit different term. We'll talk about that as well if you want, but responsiveness is different. So backend, front end. Okay. So let's just talk about URL shortener for a while. Going by this idea, जो तुम लोगों ने कुछ चीजें बोली थी, right? That the shortened URL should be unique. It should actually be short, right? Then the shortened URL need to be stored. ये सब किसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होगी? फ्रंट एंड या बैक एंड? कि यूनिक शॉर्टेन यूआरएल बने, they should be not of a very big length, they should be stored at a place, right? All this, right? So front end is not at all responsible for doing any of this, right? This has to be done in backend. All this logic, all this data has to be in backend. What is front end responsible for? Front end is responsible for taking your long URL, giving it to backend. Backend will shorten it. Backend will do all the stuff, give you back the shortened URL, and you show it. One. Second, redirection. If you open this kind of a URL, which is the shortened one, then front end has the responsibility of contacting backend, knowing the long URL and redirecting. ये दोनों चीजें समझ में आ रही है कि one thing that front end is responsible, taking long URL. मैं long URL short URL बोलूंगा. Long is the one that we are trying to shorten, right? So taking the long URL from user, supplying it to backend, getting the shortened URL, and showing it. One responsibility of front end. Second responsibility of front end, if someone opens short URL, redirect. Again here, contact backend, get long URL, and redirect. दोनों यूज के समझ में आ रहे हैं क्या? The two things that front end would be responsible for. Can we control the length of the shortened link? कौन करेगा वो? शुभम? Obviously करेंगे. But who will do it? Front end या back end? Back end. Very good. One more last thing. Yeah, go ahead. You can ask your questions. You can ask your doubts. इसके बाद एक और कंसेप्ट इंट्रोड्यूस करूंगा मैं लास्ट, देन वी विल डायरेक्टली जंप ऑन टू कोडिंग, राइट? व्हाट इज बिटली? ओके, बिटली इज काइंड ऑफ लाइक अ वेबसाइट जहां पे यू कैन गिव योर लॉन्ग यूआरएल्स. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, if you have ever created a Google form, Google Doc, like for example this one only, this has a huge link, right? Now if I want to send it across to someone or share it probably in a screen share, let's say I'm having an event in a event in a college, and I want to show this URL, so people will not be able to read it and type it and get to the page, right? So what you do, you shorten it to a small form, bit.ly, let's say /apc, very short URL. Then people are able to put that URL and get redirected here. Do you get the idea? It's like a way of converting long URLs to a short URL, that if someone opens that short URL, they are redirected to the long URL. Okay? We are not using Bitly for our project. We are building Bitly. We are building something very similar to Bitly. Okay? Yeah. Use of front end in URL shortener. So front end दो part करेगा. First part, front end will take note of what user wants to shorten. जैसे ये वाला लिंक. So for example, यहाँ पे if I take this link, put it here and click shorten. So noting down what the URL wants, user wants to shorten, getting this shortened URL. So it will take this long URL, send it to backend. Backend will shorten it. हम shorten नहीं करेंगे, front end shorten नहीं करेगा. Backend will shorten it and send back the shortened link, which is this. Second use case, if I open this link, redirecting to the original URL. So ये दोनों चीजें जो हैं front end करेगा. ओके, फ्रीक्वेंट यूज केस ऑफ बिटली. हाँ, तुम लोग बिटली पे सवाल करने लग गए हो, अभी डेवलपमेंट करने दो. बट हाँ, बिटली के फ्रीक्वेंट यूजेस यार, फीडबैक फॉर्म्स, देन लाइक इफ पीपल हैव लॉन्गर वेबसाइट नेम्स, दे जनरली यूज दैट, राइट? ऑल दीस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स आर देयर, वेरी कॉमन. ठीक है, perfect. Let's move on. Let's talk about one last concept before we go into coding, which is API. How many of you understand API? What is an API? Okay, explain करेगा कोई? What is an API? Application Programmer Interface is fine. That is the full form. But साधारण शब्दों में बताएं तो what is API? Front end to back end communication. ठीक है. तो API is a generic term पहली बात तो in programming. It is not related to website, front end, back end. Whenever we have two components, A and B, client server, A को B से contact करना है, A को B से contact करना है, तो they go through certain defined functions. तो एक बार सुन लो, I think अब रुक सकते हैं probably, right? For example, let's go back to our restaurant example, right? अब restaurant में बैठे हुए, like let's say it's a street food restaurant, right? And you go there and say, can you bring me probably dal chawal? It is not possible, yes or no? Let's say it's a street food place and you go there and ask for something like something which is not available in their menu. You can't do that most of the times, yes or no, everyone? You know? So what is this? What? So server जो kitchen है, that has defined कि यार this these 5 items I make. Don't ask me something random. Yes or no? So any server which wants to make data available to client defines that these are the different things that you can ask me, right? Don't ask me some random KBC. And those things are essentially APIs. So APIs are like fixed signature. Here, these are the functions that you can call, or these are the things that you can ask me, right? And you have to just ask those. Okay? Idea समझ में आ रहा है API का? Then I'll give a more concrete example, but idea समझ में आ रहेगा कि server कुछ भी data नहीं देगा. Server has defined things. You can ask me this, A, B, C, D, 4 things. So it defines all of these things, right? And essentially those things are your APIs. Your client can hit one of these 4 APIs or can ask for one of these 4 things, right? Okay. How many of you have used some math library while coding? Hash include math.h or if you're using Python import math, something like that, right? So क्या तुम मैथ से कुछ भी मांग सकते हो मैथ लाइब्रेरी से? नहीं, राइट? व्हाट इट हैज सम डिफाइंड फंक्शंस. यार स्क्वायर रूट है, tan है, sin है, these are the things, right? Yes or no? So that is also an API. When you import a module and you call those modules functions, that is the API exposed by that module to make a call. ये समझ में आ रहा है क्या? So whenever you plug in your code something from the outside or some data you are trying to get from outside, you have to integrate its APIs to get that data. ये सब समझ में आ रहेगा. Yes or no? What is the idea of an API? So whenever you have two components in a system, one server, one client, client wants to get something from server. So server exposes a set of APIs that the client can call. ये APIs हैं which you can call. ठीक है, theory, everyone is clear with all of this. Client, server, response, request, API. What is backend, what is frontend? इतना clear है, so we can go ahead and start coding. Everyone? A quick yes, then we'll move on. Perfect. So let's now jump on to Visual Studio. So what we are going to do, we are going to first build our backend and our APIs. So first focus of ours would be to build our backend APIs. Okay. Backend is about developing APIs. In APIs, we work on data and logic. Yes, that is exactly what backend is. That is what we need to do, right? Creating our APIs and allowing people from frontend to ping those APIs and get their data. Okay. Okay. So we are going to build this backend APIs. Can you tell me what different APIs that do you see here? What kind of different things we want our frontend to be able to do with our backend? What kind of things? Yeah, it might look like backend की task tough है, but actually frontend की task भी equally tough होती है, because frontend has to make sure कि कभी lag ना हो website, या कभी ऐसा ना हो कि like there is so much data that it is not able to handle it and it stops working in the person's system, right? So all those things are even more complicated if I talk about it. ठीक है, right? So frontend को मुझसे क्या क्या काम हो सकते हैं backend से, right? So frontend की task देखते हैं. Frontend will take long URL from user, contact backend and get the shorten URL. So can I say one API that we need would be shorten, which essentially will take our long URL and give us the short URL. Yes or no? एक function ऐसा चाहिए जैसे math में tan sign होता है. I need a shorten function that takes the long URL and gives me a short URL. Yes or no? Agrees everyone? Everyone agrees? Shorten function. Can I get a yes from everyone? This makes sense. Let's look at second task that frontend has. If someone opens short URL, contact the backend, get the long URL. So another thing that it needs is, can I say retrieve long URL? कि यार अगर short URL दिया तो उससे मुझे long URL दे दो. Yes or no? सब करेंगे. Don't worry. आज Ragib will do MVC, will do everything. We'll store the database. Everything we'll do. But these are the two APIs that we need, right? So these two APIs we are going to create. Yes or no? Does this make sense? कि हमारे URL shortener के लिए backend में दो API चाहिए. One to shorten the URL. Second to retrieve the long URL for the shortened URL. Yes or no, everyone? Okay, so let's start building these. So what I'll do, I'll go to my Visual Studio Code. So if you see, there are two parts to it, right? Backend, frontend. मैंने दो part में divide कर दिया. Now what I'll do, yes, I will request everyone to code along, right? Code को भी share कर दूंगा मैं later GitHub पे, but अभी साथ साथ code कर लोगे तो it will be better, right? So I have opened Visual Studio. I have opened a folder here. I have created two folders, backend, frontend. First, I'll start with backend. So what I'll do, I've opened this terminal. Terminal कैसे open होता है? On top, you'll see an option of terminal and new terminal. So you can do that. So what I'll do, I'll go into backend. First thing that we do, we initialize a node repository. How do we do that? We say npm init. So it will ask you a few questions. What do you want to name it? I'll say backend. Version 1, description nothing, index.js, s command, enter, and it will say yes. So what do you see? इसने एक package.json बना के एक node repository start कर दी है. Okay. npm init was the command that I used. So if those who are following along, just open any folder in your Visual Studio terminal and write npm init. So as soon as you do npm init, it will create this package.json file. इसके बारे में हम बात करेंगे थोड़ी देर में, right? ठीक है? But npm init essentially starts a node repository. Okay, inside backend folder, right? Inside backend folder, just do an npm init. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll create a file here called index.js, जहां पे हम actual JS code लिखेंगे हम. Okay, so two things I've done: opened a folder, done npm init, created a new file index.js. Everyone with me? Can I get a yes? यहाँ तक फॉलो कर पा रहे हो तो npm init doesn't work. तुमने node और npm डाउनलोड किया था? Did you download node and npm as I mentioned on the group? Okay, then it should work. Maybe you can debug it later, but npm init should work. Yes, backend में npm init. Yes, node v version देखो. Do you have node running? If not, then it would not have been correctly made, right? Yeah. Okay. ठीक है. So anyways, मतलब still try to see whenever I am coding. Meanwhile, you can debug. You can be a little behind, but try to make notes and make sure that you are following the content, right? That will be important also. Okay. So I've done npm init. We have created this index.js file. Okay. Now I'll talk about repeat please. ठीक है. मैंने कुछ नहीं किया है. I've just opened Visual Studio, opened the backend folder, done npm init inside it. npm init initializes a node repository. ठीक है. उससे क्या हुआ, अपने आप ये पैकेज जेसन बन गई हुई. नेक्स्ट व्हाट आई डिड, आई क्रिएटेड अ न्यू फाइल index.js. ठीक है विकास. ओके, लेट्स मूव ऑन. सो लेट मी टॉक अबाउट कि व्हाट इज नोड एंड व्हाट इज एक्सप्रेस दैट वी आर गोइंग टू यूज. Someone who knows the difference, Node.js, Express.js, anyone who knows the difference? So I'll give a very brief idea. Node.js is the runtime environment for JavaScript to run. अच्छा, कितने लोग यहाँ पे जावा में कोड करते हैं? How many of you code in Java? So in Java also there is something known as Java runtime environment or JRE, right? So any language that needs to run, it needs a whole environment around it for it to function. ठीक है? So that is given by Node.js. तो initially क्या हुआ था? JavaScript was built for browsers. So browsers had the capability of running JavaScript. Now, to make it suitable for backend, they created something known as Node.js, which is like a runtime environment where it can support JavaScript running for backend, even without a browser environment, right? So yeah, runtime environment for JavaScript. Express is the actual framework used to create APIs. So although people say कि यार backend development in Node.js, it is in fact backend development in Express.js, if you think about it, right? Great. So first thing that we'll do, we'll install the Express.js with us. So I'll simply write npm install express. npm install express to actually have my Express installed as well. तो ये command में देता हूँ. So npm init npm install express. हाँ. So यार देखो, API or backend बनाने में there is a lot of things that happen, right? For example, the request that we are sending, that is being sent through internet, yes or no? अब वो जो internet में bytes flow हो रहे होंगे, you have to read that, you have to convert it into object. Then whenever you are sending back response, again you have to convert that into bytes and send it via wires, right? So a whole thing goes into the background to actually make a server run, right? So Express is a framework that leaves all of this up to itself कि यार मैं कर दूंगा ये, तुम बस मुझे बताओ रिक्वेस्ट कहाँ से आ रही है, किस फॉर्मेट में आ रही है, और रिस्पॉन्स किस फॉर्मेट में देना है, and it will handle all of that. How to send it through wire to another person, how to receive from wire and convert it, and all that stuff. Okay. So if you want to create APIs, Express is one of the options. There are others now that are coming, but Express is one of the most preferred, I would say, for backend development or API development. Okay. Okay. So npm install Express. Now let's try to start working on Express. So what I'll do, I'll import our Express. ओके, तो कोशिश करो मेरे साथ साथ फॉलो कर लो, है ना? सो इंपोर्ट माय एक्सप्रेस. एक हमें छोटा सा पैकेट जो जेसन में चेंज करना होगा टू मेक दिस इनटू अ पैकेज. तो वो मैं क्विकली बता देता हूँ. टाइप मॉड्यूल क्या. सो विल गो टू आवर पैकेज और जेसन एंड हियर विल डू टाइप मॉड्यूल. तो इंपोर्ट यूज करने के लिए वी हैव टू इंक्लूड दिस टाइप एज मॉड्यूल. ठीक है. So I've done two, three things. Steps में लिखे जा रहा हूँ. I've done npm init. I've done npm install express. In package.json, I have added this type module. And I have imported express here. Okay, so वही मैंने दोबारा टाइप किया अभी पास. Just do npm install express, import express here like this. Go to package.json, put type module here. Okay. If we don't use type module, then how can we import work? तब import नहीं चलता है. This is a new feature. Then you have to use require. This format. पहले require से चलता था सब. अभी quickly we have moved to import. तो इसकी अब जरूरत नहीं है. We can directly use import. nam install नहीं है, npm install है. Just see. Okay. What is the work of Express? For creating your backend APIs. That is where Express is needed. So मैं एक काम करता हूँ. So I've done npm init. यार पहली चीज ये की थी. Next is I did npm install Express. Third thing I wrote this import statement. यहाँ तक कितनों का चल गया है? Can I get a yes? If npm init, npm install Express and import, these three you have written. And fourth, you have written type module here. Package.json में I have just added type module. Okay. Anyways, I'll share this entire code. So if some things are breaking here and there, just try to revisit it, try to see how it works, right? Next, what I'll do, I'll first initialize an Express app. So what I'll say, constant app equal to Express. Okay, repeat. कहाँ तक हुआ है तुम लोगों का? Can you let me know? npm init सबका चल गया. npm init के बाद I have written npm install express, right? Express install करने के लिए ये दो चल गए. Just do this quickly. Okay. Package log की जरूरत नहीं है अभी. Don't worry about it. जो खुद से बनते जा रहा है उसको अभी छोड़ दो. We'll discuss about it कि what they are, what etc. everything. अभी just try to be with me in terms of coding. So npm install, npm init, npm install express, package json में type module. Third thing. Then I've simply written these two lines here. अभी okay, कुछ भी enter कर दो, just let it end. Okay, npm init में don't fill anything, just do enter, it will automatically create. Okay, ठीक है. So we have created an express app initially. Next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to say that our app is going to work with JSON. ठीक है. How many of you understand what JSON is? Just click enter. It will automatically take it. How many of you know JSON? What is JSON? JavaScript object notation. ये तो ठीक है. But what is the meaning of this? ठीक है. So in JavaScript, the way that objects are defined are in the form of key value pair. For example, if you have to define me, name Bharat, last name Khanna, company Programming Pathshala, right? So key value, right? So if I try to brief it, name, and let's say age 27, so on and so forth, right? So basically, a key value pair, this is how a general object is represented in JavaScript. Does that make sense? And this is known as JSON. JavaScript object notation. Is this clear? What is JSON? Simple key value pairs. Can I get a yes? If this makes sense, what is JSON? So what does this line say? This line say that our app, the Express app that we are creating, that has to make sure that the request that is coming, we convert it into JSON, and the response that we are sending, that is again going to be a JSON, and you convert it and send it. Okay. So it's like our app is going to always use JSON format for communication. Does that make sense? What is the idea of this JSON? So I'll just repeat what I'm saying. What does this line do? This line establishes the fact that we are going to use JSON for the communication, right? ये clear हो रहेगा सबको? Can I get a yes? It's like the content type. Exactly. We can send string, but general communication would be JSON based. That is what we are trying to say here. Okay, great. So let's create our first API now. What is the first API that we needed? Shorten. Okay. Now there are generally two kinds of APIs. which are common. There are patch, put, etc. as well. सबके बारे में बात कर लेंगे थोड़ी देर में. But get and post, right? तो दो तरह की API होती है, get APIs, post API. Can anyone tell the difference कि get और post में क्या फर्क होता है, right? So as the name suggests, get के साथ generally it is to get some information back. So just like reading. In post, we post some data and then expect response back. ठीक है? Difference clear हुआ? Post is generally for storing the data or something like that. Yes or no? ठीक है? तो shorten वाली जो API है, should it be get, should be post? Get means you want to get some information. Post means you want to post some data and then expect some response. Post, right? You are posting or you are putting a new URL and expecting a shortened form of it. So that is why it has to be post. Does this make sense? Right? Way to write type module. यहाँ पे we have written type module. Okay. Right. So app dot post. Let's name the API. So name of the API is shorten. Okay. Achha, how many of you have never coded in JavaScript before? So you might not be aware of this. No? Okay. So I'll not use this. So I'll create a new function. Okay. I'll create a new function. Let's say shorten. And what I'll say, when someone posts something to this shorten, call my function. Does this make sense? So what I've done, I have written a post API whose name is shorten. And I'm saying when we get a request on this shorten API, I call my function, which is the shorten function. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Now, this shorten function, always the function that we get with the API, that function always take two parameters, request and response. Request and response. Idea क्या होता है? Response is kind of, you can imagine if you have done normal functions. Response is like your pass by reference. क्या response बना के दे दो मुझे. Request is what you are getting from the client. Request response clear है क्या? What is request? What is response? We talked about it, right? When front end calls backend, it sends a request. Backend, what it wants to send back to front end is the response. ठीक है? तो यहाँ पे इस function में we are saying this is the request that you are getting and this is the object that you want to create as a response and send back. ये ठीक है क्या? What is this function? Shorten. So what I'll say, I'll extract out from this request my long URL. So I'll say let my long URL is equal to request.body.long URL. Okay. Okay, let's talk about what this body is and why we are doing this. So how many of you have ever written an HTML file? Yes or no? उसमें आधा head होती है, body होती है. There is a head portion, there is a body portion. What is the idea? What does head contain? What does body contain? Right. So head generally contains your metadata that defines some things about the website, right? But body contains the real data. Yes or no? So same thing happens in request and response. Your headers or your head contains some detail कि यार ये कहाँ से request आ रही है, कितना size है request का, request किस language में है, and all that stuff, right? But the body of the request contains the actual data. तो मैंने क्या बोला? Request की body access करो and find the long URL from that body. ये समझ में आ रहा है क्या? What this line is doing? Variable declaration है. Int x equal to 3 लिखते हैं ना? तो it's like let JavaScript में there is nothing like type नहीं होता है, right? So you just declare directly. So I've written let long URL is equal to from request.body get the long URL. Okay, ये clear हो रहेगा कि what we are doing here. अब बताओ shorten कैसे करें? What should be the logic for actually shortening this long URL? Hash, okay? Hash. But see, whenever you are generating short URLs, it is not advisable to use hash. मतलब unnecessary है. You can literally replace with any string. Yes or no? कुछ भी एक random string बना दो and that will do the job. Yes or no? Okay? एक बार assume करते हैं. Let's say we generate a random string of size, let's say 5. ठीक है, let's say 5 length की string करते हैं, generate, okay, which can contain small a to z, capital A to z, and 0 to 9. ठीक है. So for example, one possible option could be, let's say A B3ER, 5 length string which can contain capital, small, and numbers. ये कर सकते हैं, yes or no? Generate a random string for this particular long URL and send it back, right? ठीक है, एक बार थोड़ा कैलकुलेशन करते हैं. If we do this, how many possible unique strings are there? कितने URL हम shorten कर पाएंगे with this idea? Anyone who can help with this calculation? Okay, एक position पे, at one single position, how many possible characters are there which we can put? 26 plus 26 plus 10, which is how much? 62, right? So at any one position, we can put 62 characters, and there are 5 such positions. So 62 into 62 into 62 5 times. That is 62 to the power 5. Does this number make sense? कि हम इतनी सारी URLs generate कर सकते हैं with just 5 length? Yes or no, everyone? I'm not getting. ठीक है, I'll repeat. I'm saying request से long URL आया. Long URL को तुम्हें shorten करना है. Shorten में let's say you say I just want to create a 5-letter like suffix कि bit.ly फिर 5 letters हो, and those 5 letters could be A to Z small, A to Z capital, and 0 to 9. ये समझ में आया कि what we are trying to do? तो अब I was asking कितनी strings shorten कर सकते हैं इस तरह से, या कितने URL के लिए we can generate a shortened form. So I'm saying at one position you can have either of these 26, these 26, or these 10. So total 62 possibilities at one position. So if there are 5, 62 to the power 5 possibilities, इतनी unique short URLs बना सकते हैं हम. So इतनी ज़्यादा strings के साथ we can work. Does this make sense? Yes or no? This calculation? Okay. So I think this should be fine, even with the good enough scale, good enough number of users. This much URLs is fine. Yes or no? It's a huge number, right? So let's do exactly that. Let's try to generate a 5-letter string, 5-letter random string, and append it with Bitly and send it back, right? So for random string generator, there is a particular library which helps us generate random string, which is known as random string, literally. So what we'll do, we'll install that library. So I'll say npm install random string. Okay. So I'll import that library. Okay. And now I'll say, let the shortened URL is equal to random string dot generate 5 length. To generate a 5 length random string. ये समझ में आ रहेगा this line. You generate a random 5-letter string, right, which will become your shortened URL. So random string एक library है. I installed that using npm install, and then I'm saying random string dot generate. ठीक है. अब I just need to send it back. So how do you send it back? You go to your response and say response dot send short URL with this shortened URL. Simple. API. Long URL आया. Abhi obviously a lot of things are missing here. That is true. But very simply, if we see what is happening here, request से we extracted out the long URL, we generated a random short URL, and we sent it back. Obviously, अभी हमने इसको store नहीं किया है, we have not ensured कि collision ना हो, all that stuff. But this is how basic API is looking like, and it's not very different from a function. Just instead of doing return, you are saying response.send back this response. ये समझ में आ रहेगा. ये backend के अंदर इंस्टॉल करना है. Yes. So inside the backend folder, you have to install all the dependent libraries, right? But ये function समझ में आ रहेगा quickly क्या हो रहा है यहाँ पे. Okay. पहले मैं इसको ऐसे ही रन करता हूँ ताकि we see if we are able to get this string generated. Then what we can do is we can obviously fix the things here, right? So let's say I want to run it on a particular port. अभी और concepts आएंगे, port का, socket का, listen का. So let's do that. ठीक है. What we need to install? Random string. ये random string. So npm install random string. This is the thing that you need to install. Okay. अभी मैंने क्या लिखा है? So I've written a post API shorten, and I've said our app to listen to port number 3005. Port number की कहानी मैं बताता हूँ थोड़ी देर में. IP address, port number, that will again be theoretical. We'll talk about it. But simply by this, we'll be able to generate our particular shortened URLs. Let's see that running, right? You can use caps also. मतलब, I don't think it will matter. It would rename, right? Okay. Does the generate function ensure the output would be from the permitted characters A to Z, 0 to 9? Right. So in general, yes, but there are settings that you can put in this random string module. Okay. So you can configure it. Here, this should only generate, let's say, letters, or it should only generate numbers. All that can be configured, but right now by default, that is the behavior. Okay. Even if, let's say, there are underscores or characters, it doesn't really matter to us, right? Do you agree? String to string hai, it won't matter, right? But just to have your own kind of improvisation, you can in fact do that kind of a setting. Okay, great. So let's start our app. So what I'll do, I'll say node space index.js. Okay, so it says address is already in use. Let's change the address. Let's use 3007. इस पे आते हैं पोर्ट वाली चीज पे. तो अभी डोंट गेट टू स्कैर्ड कि व्हाट इज दिस पोर्ट एंड ऑल. ठीक है. सो इफ यू सी आवर ऐप इज नाउ रनिंग. अच्छा, one thing which is very different from your normal programming. In normal programming, let's say in C++, Java, all these kind of places, what happens? Do you generally run the code once or do you keep something running forever? Once, right? एक बार चलता है प्रोग्राम, इनपुट लेता है, आउटपुट दे देता है, खत्म. But in websites or web servers, they need to be continuously running, right? So that is again a responsibility of our Express app. It's an Express app, so it will keep on running, keep on listening to this port, keep on serving these APIs. ठीक है क्या? तो someone was asking again कि Express के क्या use case है? तो Express ensures all of this. If you run something with Node, it will run once and end, because it's just a runtime environment, just like normal C++ Java coding. Express is the one that makes sure that it's like an API that it needs to continuously keep on running and listening. Okay. Okay. Please again say how to run. I have written node space index.js file name. Okay. Node space index.js. Right. अब what I'll do, I'll go to my Postman and try to hit this API. Okay. Yeah. Even in fact, I can do it via पर उसमें बॉडी नहीं दे पाएंगे. I think let's do it via Postman. So let's open Postman. I'll open a view. Cannot use import statement outside a module. तुम्हारी module वाली line missing होगी. So go to package.json, put type module. This would be missing. Okay. I'll give a break after this. एक बार हम Postman से run कर दें, API को ठीक कर दें. I'll give a break. So all those who are a little bit behind, lagging behind, in that break they can just quickly refresh and come back, right? Try to make it work and then come back. Okay. But let's do it a little faster. Otherwise, it will take a lot of time. So what I've done, I opened this Postman. Our API was get or our API was put. What was our API? Post likhi, right? So we'll select post here. It's a post API. Where is it running? Local host. हमारी machine पे ही है. 3007 पे है. And shorten is the URL link. So localhost shorten. ठीक है. Inside body, what do we want? We want a JSON. So raw JSON. JSON भेज सकते हैं. JSON में हमें क्या चाहिए? Long URL. Any URL. सेटिंग समझ में आ रही है क्या? Selected post. API path, body, raw JSON, this entire thing, and send. So as you can see, it generated a short URL for us, YDGSO. ये दिख रहा है क्या? How we get the API path? API path हमने app.post के बाद लिखा था slash something, right? Slash shorten. What is Postman? Postman is a tool for API testing. ठीक है? API जो तुम बना लेते हो, you can put it here and test it by sending the request and getting back a response. So यहाँ पे you configure your request, you click send and you get back a response. So it's like a simulation for making it happen. ये समझ में आ रहा है क्या? What is Postman? हाँ अभी ये सारे एरर्स देखते हैं. 2 मिनट रुक जाओ. Let me just finish it up जो start किया है and then we can continue. ठीक है? अब one more thing. If I click it again, can I say it will generate another short URL for my long URL? फिर click it again, एक और, right? But 2-3 things are missing here. First thing is it is not storing कि इसने ये URL already generate कर दिया मेरे लिए. Second, it is not giving me the same URL. It should give me the same URL. अगर मैं दोबारा उससे पूछूं कि programmingpathshala.com के लिए क्या URL है, it should give me the same URL, right? Third, it is not checking for uniqueness. अब all this is very algorithmic problem, so we'll solve it just like that. Help me out. कौन सा data structure use कर सकते हैं to make it happen? Anyone? Hashmap. How many of you agree to this? Hashmap है ना? Dictionary, hashmap. जिनको Python आती है, they would know dictionary, but I'll use hashmap, right? So let's use our hashmap. So what I'll say, let me create. हाँ उस पे आते हैं. Don't worry, Jatin. एक बार सबके मैं issues देखता हूँ. Let me just quickly go ahead and create a hash map. Put the data there, right? So let's say let our URL store equal to new of map. Okay. URL store. Now what I'll do for this long URL, the short URL that I've generated, I'll just store it. So I'll say URL store dot set इस long URL के लिए shortened URL. This part is making sense कि in our map we set कि यार इस long URL के लिए ये short URL है. Now if we get a long URL which is already present, so if my URL store dot get, if I already get long URL directly in the map, then I can directly response dot send short URL with URL store dot get long URL. ये समझ में आ रहा है क्या कि सेम लॉन्ग यूआरएल का अगर ऑलरेडी कोई वैल्यू है स्टोर में तो आई कैन डायरेक्टली सेंड दैट, जस्ट लाइक डीपी. इफ यू गाइस आर फेमिलियर विद डीपी, दिस इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट हैपेंस इन डीपी एज वेल, राइट? बट सिंपल हैश मैप कि यार if that long URL is already present in our store, we can directly get its value and send. If not, we'll generate the short URL, store it, and then send it back. Does this make sense? How we are writing this shorten function to ensure कि same value दो बार आए तो overwrite ना हो, right? It will be overwrite with new value. It will not. Why? Because if for that long URL we already have a value, if we already get something from the URL store for this long URL, then we are just storing it. We are just returning directly that. Yes or no? Does this make sense? So let me just restart the server and try it again. Response.send is like, so one thing. Response.send is like return, but not exactly like return. So better होता है कि we put everything else in else. This is always a better scenario. Can you revise hash map part? Sure, मैं दोबारा repeat करता हूँ. Right? What is a hash map? Key value store. कि इसकी के लिए ये value है. Do you agree? Right? So there were 2-3 problems that we discussed in our URL shortener. First problem was, let's say I shortened programmingpathshala.com once. उसने मुझे एक value दी. Next time I do it, it will give me another value. Next time I do it, it will give me another value. Yes or no? कि वैल्यू चेंज होती रहेगी. Agreed? That I don't want. अगर ऑलरेडी वैल्यू है तो वही दो मुझे, वापस से क्यों देंगे, राइट. सेकंड, कंफ्लिक्ट वाले केस कि व्हाट इफ दो लोगों के लिए सेम यूआरएल जनरेट हो जाए. अभी वो हमने हैंडल नहीं किया ऑल्दो, राइट. सो फॉर फर्स्ट केस व्हाट आई डिड इज आई सेड लेट मी क्रिएट अ हैश मैप टू स्टोर ऑलरेडी जनरेटेड शॉर्ट यूआरएल्स. कि यार लेट्स से एक लॉन्ग यूआरएल आया, आई जनरेटेड अ शॉर्ट यूआरएल, आई स्टोर इट इन दिस मैप सेइंग कि इस लॉन्ग यूआरएल के लिए ये शॉर्ट यूआरएल है. डज दिस मेक सेंस what this set is doing in this URL store? Second thing I did is if my store already contains something for this long URL, तो मुझे ये generate ही नहीं करना है. तो I just want to directly send back whatever was generated. ये if समझ में आएगा पहला वाला. So if my URL store already contains this long URL, I'll directly return its value. Otherwise, I'll generate a new, set it, and then return that. ये clear हुआ क्या? What is happening in this shorten function? Okay, so let's go back to our postman and see this in action. So if I click this shorten URL with programmingpathshala.com, I get this. Oh, I'm getting different values. Let me just go back and see what is the difference. शायद हमने restart नहीं किया क्या? I think we did not restart. Let me just quickly restart it. So I'll just restart it and go back to my postman. I think it should work out. So send, we get a value. Again send, we get the same value. Do you see that? That with different sends, we got the same value. Yes or no? अब it's working. Perfect. So एक issue solve हो गया. Second issue क्या था? If this short URL is already there, you generate a new one. है ना? अगर ये short URL already किसी के लिए है, so you can't assign the same short URL to two URLs, right? किस पे redirect करोगे? You will be confused. So in that case, you regenerate it, right? So we'll have to run a while loop. ठीक है? How do we do it? So for that, we would need a reverse mapping from short to long. So what I'll do, I'll create a reverse map as well. ठीक है? Repeat, sure. Problem एक जो रह गई है. What is that problem? Let's say I send ppa.com. उसने मुझे ABC रिटर्न किया. Now I send him google.com. अब अगर वो फिर से ABC रिटर्न करता है, then it's a problem. Yes or no? Do you agree? I need to handle this collision case कि same URL should not be generated. So somehow I need to know कि what are the URLs that are already generated. Yes or no? So what I can do is, if you don't even want reverse map, you can have a short URL store, like a set of all the short URLs that we already have assigned, right? ये समझ में आ रहा है? ये set क्या है? Set of all those short URL जो हम already किसी को दे चुके हैं, so that we don't give it again, right? So while we are generating it, what I'll check, let's say initially shortened URL is null. So while shortened URL is null, you generate a new string. If our set contains this new string that you tried to generate, so if our short URL store dot has our shortened URL, that means this is not a new one. This is already assigned to someone. So I can reset my shortened URL to null. Taki, again this loop runs because it's null and it tries to generate another value. ये loop समझ में आ रहा है क्या? Can you repeat why we need to use set? Sure. So problem was, एक let's say website के लिए we generated a short URL. अब this short URL should not be generated for any other website. Yes or no? ये agreed हुआ? ठीक है? That this should not be given to any other website. तो how do we check that? We would need to know कौन से ऐसे URLs हैं जो already हम दे चुके हैं. Yes or no? किसी को? That is what I am storing in this set. Set of all the URLs that I've already assigned to some long URL. Okay? Is this set making sense? What is this set? short URL store. So what I have done, I have tried to repeatedly generate a short URL. Repeatedly generate a short URL. अगर वो short URL unique है, it is not there in the set, तब तो we'll exit from the loop. Otherwise, I am again setting it to null कि try to generate it once more. ये loop समझ में आ रहा है क्या? कि while we have not generated a shortened URL, try to generate it. If it's in set, again set it to null so that we can again try to generate it. Right? What is the time boundaries we have to keep in mind while writing these logics? Very good. So I'll come to all of that. But this will work. Yes or no? Theoretically, this will work. Everyone agrees? Sometime or the other, you will generate this kind of a unique URL, and then the thing will be sorted. Right? But last thing, फिर I'll give you a 5-minute quick break also, where you can try to cover up whatever we have done so far. Okay. Last thing before we jump on to all of that, in a production setup, in a company like setup, this kind of thing will never be allowed. Why? Because it is kind of non-deterministic. When will this generate the right URL? Yes or no? It's not right thing to do. Yes, like even writing it myself, I have a little fear that what if a lot of URLs are generated at a particular point and then it is taking a long time to generate, right? हाँ, मेमोरी तो ठीक है, वो तो अभी हमने डेटाबेस कनेक्ट नहीं किया है. So a better approach than this, even when you look at some system design solutions of doing this, is to have a set of available URLs already. ठीक है? एक pool रखो available URLs का. Anytime your API hits, you take one from the pool, put it in the use pool, and then generate a new URL and put it in the unused pool. ये समझ रहे हो क्या डिफरेंस? तो एक यूज्ड पूल है यूआरएल का, एक अनयूज्ड पूल है. ठीक है? अनयूज्ड पूल में ऑलरेडी कम कुछ यूआरएल पड़े हुए हैं. तो योर एपीआई कम्स, यू जस्ट पिक वन फ्रॉम देयर, पुट इट, सेंड इट बैक. यूजर वेट नहीं करा. पैरेलली व्हाट यू डू, यू ट्राई टू रिप्लेनिश दिस सोर्स जहां पे सम अनयूज्ड यूआरएल्स आर प्रेजेंट. ये आइडिया समझ में आ रहेगा? अगेन दोबारा आता हूं. तो ये वाला तरीका क्या है? घर में मेहमान आए, लेट्स से some people are visiting your house, you look into your kitchen कि यार do we have rice and roti, and then start making it, right? ठीक है, rice है तो we'll start making it. That is what is happening. Now there is no guarantee that like there is no already pool of rice present, right? It could be that it's not there, then you have to go to market and all that, right? The other case is you already have rice in your store, right? The person, you already know कि तुम्हारे किचन में हमेशा राइस रहते हैं. The person comes, you cook, you give it to them. Later at some point when the person has left, you can replenish and get more rice and put it in your pool. ये आइडिया समझ में आ रहा है? Same thing here कि we can have a set of available URLs. नया बंदा आया URL लेने के लिए, उसको available में से एक दे दिया. Later we can add more to that available pool, जनरेट करके. अगर वो प्रोसेस स्लो भी हो तो इट डजंट मैटर. ये आइडिया समझ में आ रहेगी कि हाउ दिस कैन बी टैकल्ड, कि पैरेलली एक प्रोसेस से जनरेट करके वी कैन रिप्लेनिश द सेट. ओके. हाँ, तो इनिशियली ही हम 15 यूआरएल जनरेट करके रख लेंगे अपने पास. एपीआई हिट होती है, टेक वन, रिमूव इट. पैरेलली टेक अ नोट कि एक जा चुका है इसमें से, तो एक कभी ना कभी जनरेट करके वापस डाल लेंगे. Yes or no? Does this idea make sense? सब लोग को the idea of having a parallel process which replenishes the set, right? ये instantly तो generate कर रहा है, but do you look at this loop? What if it keeps on generating things which are already there? है ना? That is the kind of issue. ठीक है, parallelly. हाँ, parallelly concurrency अगर नहीं पढ़ा है तो these are terms that you can read about after going, right? मतलब अभी अगर explain करने लग गया तो उसी पे 2 घंटे लग जाएंगे, right? So we'll not do that. ठीक है. सो ये एक सिंपल कोड है, इसको रन कर लेते हैं विद दिस चेंज. या एंड इट सीम्स टू बी रनिंग फाइन. डिफरेंट यूआरएल्स के लिए भी सेम वैल्यू नहीं आ रही है. सो ऑल्दो दैट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू चेक राइट नाउ, बट या ठीक है. ग्रेट. सो वील गिव अ क्विक 5-minute ब्रेक. जो लोग भी अभी तक अटके हुए हैं, नेक्स्ट थिंग दैट विल डू, विल कंप्लीट द सेकंड एपीआई, रिट्रीव लॉन्ग यूआरएल एपीआई, राइट? रिट्रीव वाली एपीआई बनाते हैं. and we'll link with the database, we'll deploy it, we'll write a front end. ये 3-4 चीजें बची हैं that we'll do in next 1 hour. तो quick 5 minute का break है. Try to cover it till here. मैं पूरा कोड ओपन छोड़ जा रहा हूँ. Help each other. जिन लोगों ने कर लिया है, please try to help everyone जो भी यहाँ डाउट पूछ रहे हैं, right? So a quick 5 minute break. मैं भी यहीं हूँ. I'll try to answer some questions, doubts that you guys are having. Can you please tell something about Postman? हाँ, तो Postman is a thing used for API testing. कि यार तुमने API बना तो ली है, but like how will essentially you test it? Front end से डायरेक्ट तो लिंक करोगे नहीं. तो using Postman, you can try hitting the API and getting the response and seeing if that validates or not. ठीक है? Will we not implement that available and useful? अभी नहीं करेंगे because anyways in memory तो हम रखेंगे ही नहीं चीजें, right? Do you agree? We'll move it to database. So there will not be much point right now doing it. ठीक है? Install Postman or use it as a website. Like download it, install it as a client, and then you start using it. Short URL store में set कब करेंगे? यहाँ करते हैं, right? तो once we have fixed that okay ये unique short URL generate हो गया है, तो we'll store it in the set कि इस long URL के लिए ये short URL है. ये clear है क्या? How the Postman link with our code? Code separate है. Postman is just for testing. Actually तो front end call करेगा इस API को, but अभी test करने के लिए Postman से हम call करके देख रहे हैं कि response सही आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा. So it's just a testing tool. Okay. Quick question: if we keep removing from available pool and add to the used pool, at one point of time the used pool would overflow. In production, we do use a time window till when a particular short URL is valid, and later remove it from the used pool and put it in the available pool. Yes, yes. So generally, this is not for lifetime. It's probably for a few months, and then you reset your pool. Those kind of things happen. Okay. Yeah. Can you please again explain the loop part? Sure. मैं दोबारा बताता हूँ. So problem was shortened URL जो बन रहा है. What if it's not unique? So what I've done, I've taken a set of all the short URLs that are used as of now. So till we do not get a relevant URL, try to generate it. If we generate something which is already present in the store, then again make it null and retry to generate it. Do you get it? कि कैसे चल रहा है? पहले null है, we try to generate something. अगर वो already present है तो फिर से null कर दिया ताकि दोबारा से we try to generate it. ठीक है? Short URL store में कहाँ store हो रहा है? हाँ, good point. That we have left. We have to do it here. Short URL store dot add shortened URL. Very good, very good. किसने point out किया? हाँ, wow coder, good point. ये part हम भूल गए थे कि we need to put it in our set as well, so that next time ये अब used हो गया, right? So useful में add करना होगा, ठीक है? By the way, as Anup has said, कि a lot of companies have started looking for end-to-end backend वाला thing. तो उसी के लिए हमने एक पूरा backend का कोर्स भी लॉन्च किया है, which contains everything from cloud deployment, scaling, WebSockets, GraphQL, Kafka, जितने भी मेजर concepts होते हैं. तो you can check that out. मैं वो ग्रुप पे भी शेयर कर दूंगा बाद में. It is starting on 15th October. Timing will be night 9 to 10. Node में होगा. Okay, Node for backend. Node नहीं, actually Nest, which is a better form of it now. So Nest or we'll cover cloud, we'll cover deployment, Docker, Kubernetes, GraphQL, Elasticsearch, जो भी state of the art technology जितनी भी होती हैं, we'll cover everything. हाँ, definitely यार नीरज, I think it should be a good idea. 9 to 10 1 hour नहीं, 1 घंटे में कुछ नहीं होगा यार. It will at least be 2 to 2.5 hours every day. So 8 to 10 or 9 to 11, those kind of timings. Not daily, mostly on weekends, right? ठीक है, perfect. So बता दूंगा मैं ग्रुप पे शेयर कर दूंगा सब. We'll talk about it. प्राइसिंग रहती है उसकी क्योंकि ये तो पूरा लाइव कोर्स होगा, प्राइस तो रहेगा. बट वी डू असिस्ट फॉर फाइनेंशियली वीक जो लोग हैं एटलीस्ट, है ना? तो इफ यू आर ऑफ दैट जॉनर कि फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस चाहिए तो यू कैन ऑलवेज रीच आउट टू अस. वो ऑलवेज ओपन रहता है. ठीक है, परफेक्ट. एल्स पार्ट, ठीक है, मैं दोबारा एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ. तो ये पूरा जो तामझाम है, दिस इज फॉर जनरेटिंग अ यूनिक यूआरएल. कि यार अगर हमने कुछ ऐसा जनरेट किया जो ऑलरेडी स्टोर में है, तो दैट इज यूजलेस फॉर अस. मेक इट नल, ट्राई टू जनरेट अगेन. तो दिस एंटायर थिंग is for generating a न्यू यूनिक यूआरएल, ठीक है। देन हियर वी आर अपडेटिंग आवर डेटा स्ट्रक्चर्स, कि your map and your set, and here you are sending back the response, ठीक है। 3 पार्ट्स। अब बताओ किस पार्ट में डाइव करना है। इफ एनी पार्ट इज अनक्लियर एंड यू वांट मी टू डाइव डीपर, जस्ट लेट मी नो। कैन यू शो योर पोस्टमैन? पोस्टमैन दिखा दूं दोबारा। सो पोस्ट लिंक बॉडी में रॉ जेसन, lot of people do not select this json and that is why they face an issue। raw json ये सेट करना जरूरी है, and then your json and click send। 1 2 3, यहाँ पे बॉडी डालो, सेंड, ठीक है। ओके, लेट्स इन अ सिमिलर फैशन ट्राई टू राइट आवर सेकंड एपीआई। क्विकली कर लेते हैं वो। सेकंड एपीआई क्या थी? रिट्रीव लॉन्ग यूआरएल फॉर अ शॉर्ट यूआरएल। मुझे क्या चाहिए? शॉर्ट यूआरएल के कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग आई वांट द लॉन्ग यूआरएल। इट्स लाइक गेटिंग, सो गेट रिट्रीव लॉन्ग यूआरएल, है ना। एंड लेट्स मेक अ फंक्शन, सेम आइडिया। इस फंक्शन को क्लोज कर देता हूं मैं। So let's create our function, retrieve long URL, request, response, ठीक है। कैसे वर्क करेगा ये? रिक्वेस्ट में से नाउ वी वुड नीड टू फाइंड द शॉर्ट यूआरएल। सो आई विल से लेट शॉर्ट यूआरएल इक्वल टू रिक्वेस्ट डॉट बॉडी डॉट शॉर्ट यूआरएल। सेम आइडिया। अब आई वुड नीड टू फाइंड लॉन्ग यूआरएल कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग टू दिस शॉर्ट यूआरएल। यस और नो? यही चाहिए। हमने जो मैप बनाया था that is from long to short, so that introduce another map। बहुत गंदे नाम लिख रहा हूं मैं। it should actually be proper names। this will be the reverse way। short से long, ये चीज समझ रहे हो क्या? शॉर्ट से लॉन्ग क्यों चाहिए? बिकॉज क्विकली रिट्रीव करने के लिए। शॉर्ट के लिए क्या लॉन्ग था कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग? सो आई गो हियर एंड आई से so long url would be, you go to your url store 2 and you get for this short url the corresponding long url and send it back। so response dot send your long url is long URL, ठीक है। ये सबको क्लियर हो जाएगा। तो ये यूआरएल स्टोर 2 क्या है? ये ऑपोजिट है, इस शॉर्ट के लिए ये लॉन्ग है, राइट। सो आई एम जस्ट सेंडिंग बैक द कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग रिजल्ट। ये फंक्शन सबको क्लियर हो जाएगा, शॉर्ट एंड स्वीट फंक्शन। फ्रॉम द रिक्वेस्ट गेट द शॉर्ट यूआरएल, फ्रॉम द मैप गेट द कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग लॉन्ग यूआरएल, सेंड दैट लॉन्ग यूआरएल बैक। यस नो रिपीट एवरीवन। और ये यूआरएल सेट कहाँ हो रहा है? यहाँ पे, ठीक है। व्हाट इफ देयर इज नो लॉन्ग यूआरएल? गुड, we'll come to that। In production, we just copy, we just paste the short URLs in the browser and it opens the long URLs for us। How does the browser get to know which repository to look into order to get the decompressed URL? ये भी बात करेंगे, don't worry। सब करेंगे discuss, ठीक है। तो repeat करता हूँ। So I am saying the map that I had created before that was from long to short। कि long पता है तो short निकाल लो, yes or no? But what I wanted is the opposite। कि यार retrieve करने के लिए I know the short and I want to find the long form of it। Yes or no? So I created another map from short to long। कि इस short का ये long है, तो उस map से ही I have got the long URL and I have sent it back। Clear हो रहेगा कि map में short के लिए long पड़ा है, short को ढूंढो, long निकालो, रिटर्न कर दो, ठीक है। प्रॉपर डीएसए है ये, राइट। सो एनी ऑफ दोस पीपल हु आर सेइंग कि यार डीएसए वगैरह यूज नहीं होता है, you already know it's bullshit, right? Even in such a small project, got to use maps and sets and whatnot, right? But ये clear हो रहा है क्या यहाँ क्या किया है? कि short URL corresponding long URL निकाल लिया and send it back। Everyone with me? Okay? Let's try out now the complete thing. Does it actually work? तो मैं क्या करता हूँ, I'll go and say shorten. इसको मैंने रन कर दिया क्या? नहीं किया. So I'll run the application. Okay, it's running. Node index.js, same idea. I'll call shorten with programmingpathshala.com. So I get, let's say this. Now I'll say retrieve long URL where my short URL is this. Okay, so it says suppose नहीं हो सकता because it's get. So get retrieve long URL नहीं नाम है क्या? Capital था. So app.get retrieve long URL 3007. So I think we have not restarted it. Let me restart it. सबसे पहले फिर से shorten करते हैं. एकदम ऐसे वो नहीं हो जाते बेचैन कि यार ये रह गया, ये रह गया. अभी सब डिस्कस कर लेंगे, ठीक है. सो लॉन्ग यूआरएल के कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग अब शॉर्टन भी नहीं चल सकता. पोस्ट है, पोस्ट किया हमने. सो वी गॉट शॉर्ट यूआरएल. अब व्हाट आई डू, आई पोस्ट द शॉर्ट यूआरएल दिस टू माय रिट्रीव लॉन्ग यूआरएल API. एंड डू यू सी आई गॉट बाय programmingpathshala.com. यस और नो कि दोनों वर्क कर गए. Shorten to get the short URL, retrieve long URL to get back the long URL. Can everyone see that? कि दोनों चीजें वर्क कर रही हैं. Get में बॉडी दे सकते हैं यार. So it's not a rule कि नहीं दे सकते हैं. You are getting empty तो कुछ मैच नहीं कर रहा होगा. Like you might have given some short URL which is not there right now. Okay. Right. अब पूछो questions क्या हैं. I'll go back to the code. अभी you can ask any question that you guys have regarding this. But basically end-to-end work कर रहा है. Like if we shorten a particular URL, it is stored in this map and we are able to retrieve it back by this retrieve long URL API. किसका चला ये, किसी का चला क्या है मेरे साथ साथ 3 मैप क्यों यूज हुए. 3 नहीं यूज होने चाहिए थे. We can obviously optimize this. 1 map is for long to short. तो वो हमें क्यों चाहिए, to check क्या इस long के लिए पहले से ही निकल चुका है कोई short. Another map is from short to long for quick retrieval in this retrieve API. Third is set for this uniqueness. अब ये set की जरूरत नहीं है. We could have checked directly with the map as well, second map, but this is how the general flow happened and I created it, right? When we integrate DB, we would not need it, right? Although looking at the time, I'm not sure if we'll be able to integrate DB. Better than that, I would just deploy this and then talk about how we can integrate DB, right? Code पूरा दिखाऊं तो ये shorten है, ये retrieve है. ओके, कितने लोगों को यहां तक सब क्लियर हो रहा है? हाउ वी क्रिएटेड द 2 APIs, one to shorten and one to retrieve the long URL. Can I get a quick yes? यहां तक अगर absolutely clear हो रहा है तो how we went about it, everyone? Okay, one person asked a good question. What if we don't have a long URL corresponding to the short URL? तो उस केस में we should return an error. So if my long URL is equal to null or undefined, then we should formally return an error. So APIs return an error. So response dot status. We set a status code to 400 and send back error URL not found. So how many of you have seen these status codes? 400, 404, 402, 500, 503, 502, all that? Yes, no? ये देखा है क्या? 404 तो देखा ही होगा. 404 is very common, right? So there is a general trend in development. जितने भी 200 कोड होते हैं, they are for success. If everything went smoothly, return with status code 200. तो हम थोड़ा सा मॉडिफिकेशन करते हैं यहाँ. We'll set the status code to 200, saying everything is smooth. यहाँ पे भी status code to 200. Similarly ऊपर भी करा था ना हमने रिटर्न यहाँ पे status code to 200. status code 200 समझ रहे हो क्या? 200 means everything went well. It is the happy scenario. ठीक है? 200s. 400s are when front end has sent something bad. For example, 404. What is 404? Not found. Front end ने कुछ ऐसा मांगा जो है ही नहीं. Right? That is 404. Unauthenticated or unauthorized. Similarly, 403. So try to access something which is not allowed, which it is not allowed to do. Right? So all the 400 codes are when front end is wrong. So यहाँ पर भी, if we are getting some short URL which is not there, then front end is wrong. It is sending me a bad URL. Yes or no? So 400 is when front end is wrong. ये clear है क्या? 500 is when back end is wrong. Back end कब wrong होता है? For example, चलते चलते memory limit exceed कर गई. Or like let's say for example this map that we have created, lot of requests, map exceeds the memory, everything went bad. Or option, we tried to connect with database is not responding, so backend is wrong. Front end ने सब सही भेजा, front end की कोई गलती नहीं है. I was not able to handle this request, right? So 500 is when generally backend is wrong. Information is correct from front end, but backend is wrong. Information incorrect वाला केस नहीं होता. Information incorrect में तो bug है, फिर तो that's a logical bug. That is considered like a bug. This is an exception. कि एक exceptional scenario हो गया जहाँ पे backend couldn't handle the request. 400 is when front end sent a bad request. 200 is when there is a success. ये code सबको समझ में आ रहेगा. Yes or no? This is very important for debugging as well. जब भी we get some kind of an error in production level code, we look at its status code. क्या status code क्या return हुआ? If it's 200 मतलब सब सही से चल गया, but I got a bad response. तो इसका मतलब क्या है? Some logical error और bug. 400 मतलब front end ने कुछ गलत भेजा और तब back end ने गंदा response दिया. 500 means back end could not process it, right? Maybe you can retry. अब सही हो गई कुछ चीजें. Okay. So that is how production level code में debugging होती है. यहाँ तक सबको clear हो जाएगा. Can we move on? A quick yes, no, repeat. So we have written our two APIs. Show error example. ये हुआ ना? अच्छा ये वाला केस लेता हूँ. So I'll close it. I'll regenerate it and hit it with Postman. So for example, अभी restart हुआ है, तो maps will be empty. Let's say I try to retrieve a long URL and I click send. So do you see 400 bad request, error, URL not found. The error that I sent. Does this make sense? Error not found. Okay, perfect. अब एक काम करते हैं. I'll theoretically talk about a few other things that are there in backend, right? जो important है. Then we'll move on, code a small front end, link the two together, and then what we'll do, we'll try to deploy this backend on our cloud, AWS. तो तीन चीजें रह गई. First, let's talk about some theory remaining for backend. I'll not implement it because then the session will go up to 11 or 12, I think. Second, we'll build a small front end, link it with this backend. Third, I'll put this backend on AWS so that we can actually see how things work in production. Okay? Can we start? Question. If we still not stored anything in database, how we get or set? Empty होगा. Empty में get करने की कोशिश तो कर ही सकते हो, but that will be null then, right? Response और set से पहले return लगाना compulsory है. Return तो लगाया ही नहीं ना हमने. Send ही किया सीधा, right? Status लगाना जरूरी है, you are saying. It's a like in production level code, it's almost mandatory you set your status code, right? But there is no return here. Return तो नहीं है, right? Okay, ठीक है. Let's talk about few more relevant, important discussions that we will need to do. So backend जो है, what part did we say? It is for yes. अगर डीबी हम कनेक्ट कर देंगे तो वी वुड नॉट नीड दीज डेटा स्ट्रक्चर्स, राइट? ठीक है, तो बैकएंड की जो मैंने बात करी, इट इज डेटा प्लस लॉजिक, yes or no, everyone recalls that? Data storing, which we are doing in our maps, plus logic, right? Generally backend layer could be divide into two parts. So what we say we follow something known as a MVC architecture. How many of you have heard this term, MVC? It is model view controller. Model view controller. Model is essentially your data or database. View is your front end. Controller is the one having logic. So we segregate कि यार controller is separate, which is actually your backend. Model is separate, which is your database. ठीक है? अब there are a few reasons हमने ये क्यों किया. Imagine this. अभी हमने ये maps बनाए. We have created these maps. Anytime this machine restarts or anytime this server restarts, what will happen? Map gets empty. Does everyone agree? Yes or no? Map जो बनाए हैं with it is stored where? It is stored in our RAM. RAM is volatile memory. It goes as soon as you restart, right? So we need to store it in somewhere which is persistent or which is forever. So that is why what we did was we created something known as databases, which are separate entity altogether, which permanently store their data into files. Like hard disk में से store होती है चीजें वैसे. Does that make sense? That why we had to separate model and controller? And what is the benefit of it? View is front end जो दिखा रहे. View तो अभी भी था, but we had not segregated these two. We said backend logic भी रखेगा और data भी रखेगा. Now I am saying backend will only contain logic. Data will go to database. Yes or no? Everyone with me? ठीक है? So a separate machine known as database which permanently stores our data. कि अगर backend restart भी होता है, so it still keeps on serving the data from database. Second thing, as soon as we do this, an important thing occurs. This controller now need not store any data. मतलब हमें ये फिक्स करना होता है कि बैकएंड अब कोई डेटा स्टोर नहीं करेगा. व्हाई? बिकॉज वी हैव ऑलरेडी एस्टैब्लिश्ड इट कि बैकएंड जो है वो रीस्टार्ट हो सकता है, तो वो डेटा लॉस हो जाएगा. सो वट एवर डेटा यू वांट, यू जस्ट स्टोर इट इन डेटाबेस. सो इसीलिए हम एपीआई इस फॉर्म की एपीआई को बोलते हैं रेस्ट एपीआई. व्हाट इज रेस्ट? रिप्रेजेंटेशनल स्टेट ट्रांसफर. ठीक है, यहाँ पे इंपॉर्टेंट वर्ड है स्टेट ट्रांसफर. कि व्हाट दे डू, दे ट्रांसफर द स्टेट फ्रॉम द डेटाबेस टू फ्रंट एंड. स्टेट क्या है? बेसिकली हमारा डेटा. सो इट्स रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, इट्स सोल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी is to transfer the data from database to front end by doing the relevant computation. But it cannot store any data. Backend cannot store any data. Any of our APIs cannot use any internal data. They have to just rely on data from database. ये आइडिया क्लियर हो रहेगा कि हमने मॉडल और कंट्रोलर अलग कर दिए एंड इन एपीआई को रेस्ट एपीआई बोल दिया कि दे विल जस्ट डू ट्रांसफर ऑफ डेटा बट नॉट स्टोर एनी डेटा विद देमसेल्व्स. यस नो? जो हमने क्रिएट किया वो रेस्ट नहीं है. आइडियली वो रेस्ट नहीं है. लाइक दैट इज नॉट हाउ यू क्रिएटेड. ऑल्दो एक्सप्रेस बोलता है कि रेस्ट एपीआई क्रिएट कर रहे हो, बट इफ यू डू समथिंग दैट वी हैव डन, it is not a REST API. It should not be called a REST API, right? Because we are having our own state. Okay, repeat. Sure, मैं repeat करता हूँ. So I am saying, सबसे पहली बात, अभी हमने फ्रंट एंड बैक एंड बोला था. व्यू इज फ्रंट एंड, बैक एंड हमारा डेटा प्लस लॉजिक दोनों था. डू यू एग्री ऋषभ? अब हमने बोला व्हाट इफ दिस बैक एंड गोज डाउन, व्हाट इफ इट हैड टू रीस्टार्ट, व्हाट विल हैपन? सारा डेटा चला गया. यस और नो? ऑल द डेटा इज लॉस्ट. डू यू एग्री? जितने भी URL शॉर्टन हुए होंगे, दे स्टॉप वर्किंग. दैट इज बैड. यस. सो हमने क्या बोला? लेट्स सेपरेट डेटा विद कंट्रोलर. एक डेटाबेस बना देते हैं, विल स्टोर द डेटा देयर. ओके, डेटा अलग हो गया. देन वी सेड हमारी जो बैकएंड एपीआईज हैं, दे वुड बी कॉल्ड रेस्ट एपीआई. दे वुड जस्ट डू स्टेट ट्रांसफर. दे विल टेक द स्टेट और द डेटा फ्रॉम द डेटाबेस, गिव इट टू फ्रंट एंड. बट वो अपना कोई डेटा स्टोर नहीं करेंगी. इज दिस मेकिंग सेंस? what was state transfer, and why what are REST APIs essentially. ठीक है, that is the whole idea. Okay. Another thing, अब जैसे ही हमने अलग किया तो there came a lot of databases. कौन कौन से तरह के डेटाबेस तुमने सुने हुए हैं? मेन कैटेगरीज दो होती हैं, सीक्वल बेस्ड एंड नो सीक्वल बेस्ड. सीक्वल बेस्ड डेटाबेस कौन से हुए? पोस्टग्रेस, माईसीक्वल, SQLite, Oracle, all these, right? जहां पे डेटा इज वेरी वेरी स्ट्रक्चर्ड and it is stored in the form of tables. Give you an example. For example, कोई कॉलेज है, there is a college. I want to store the information of all its students. Data is very defined. Roll number of the student, name of the student, address of the student, marks of the student, subject, etc., right? But every student has the same attributes. Yes or no? Do you agree with this? कि हर student जो है उसके attributes which are relevant to college will be same. Let's take another example. Let's say Amazon products. If there is an electronic item, उसमें RAM होगी, उसमें voltage power होगी. Simultaneously, if there is, let's say, a water bottle, उसमें ये सब नहीं होगा. उसमें it would be what is the material, etc. Yes or no? So data of all the products is very different. One product of Amazon can look very very different from another product of Amazon. Like the attributes that are relevant to the users of Amazon, they'll be very different. For example, अगर मैं phone खरीद रहा हूँ, तो I will look at battery life, I'll look at RAM, I'll look at hard disk. But if I'm buying, let's say, a bed sheet, I'll probably look at the pattern on it, the color of it, the material used, etc. Yes or no? ये समझ में आ रहा है क्या? So in these kind of scenarios, when the data is unstructured, it cannot be defined as a table. It can be, but then it will become very overhead and complicated. So there we go for NoSQL based database, जहाँ पे tables नहीं होते हैं. अब NoSQL में भी there are few different categories. For example, MongoDB is one, which is like JSON object, कि तुम्हारा जो JSON है उसको डंप कर दो. तो Amazon प्रोडक्ट्स के लिए एक्चुअली बीसन बोलते हैं, आई एग्री, बट जस्ट टू सिंप्लीफाई इट, इट्स इन दिस फॉर्मेट, राइट? कि यार यू जस्ट स्टोर थिंग्स एज की वैल्यू की वैल्यू की वैल्यू. Amazon प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, एवरी प्रोडक्ट हैज की वैल्यू की वैल्यू की वैल्यू, राइट? ये क्लियर है क्या? MongoDB, ठीक है. देन देर आर सम टाइमलाइन बेस्ड डेटाबेस. उबर का एग्जांपल लेते हैं. उबर को क्या दिखाना होता है? This particular person is right now here, right now here, right now here, right now here, right? एक timeline of how it is moving. Then to predict कि अब वो कितने टाइम में पहुंच जाएगा एंड में, yes or no? So that prediction can only happen if he knows the timeline. Yeah, it will follow this route will take this much time, and so on and so forth, right? So timeline based database. Second, similarly ChatGPT क्या रखता है कि यार पहले ये पूछा यूजर ने, फिर ये पूछा, फिर ये पूछा, फिर ये पूछा. सो इट नीड्स टू मेंटेन अ टाइमलाइन ऑफ द क्वेरीज टू बी एबल टू रेफर बैक एंड रिस्पॉन्ड. यस और नो? इट कैन नॉट लूज कि एक सेशन में ये टाइमलाइन रही है. यस और नो? एनी डीबी दैट स्टोर्स टाइमलाइन, आई थिंक स्नोफ्लेक होता है, आई एम नॉट रियली श्योर. आई थिंक ये सब वैसे क्विकली गूगल सर्च करके हो जाता है. स्नोफ्लेक टाइम सीरीज डेटाबेस. हाँ, good time series database, right? So I think Snowflake is one example. Is Firebase a database? Yes. वो उसकी तरह ही होता है. Firebase नहीं, Firestore होता है एक, which is key value store of Firebase, that is there. Kindly repeat कर दें timeline database. Sure. मैंने ये बोला, in a lot of scenarios, maintaining a timed series कि यार ये events हुए इस timeline पे, that is important to predict future. One, second, to revisit it and see how things happened and all that stuff. ठीक है? तो जहां पे भी ये timeline important हो जाती है, we go for time series based databases. Okay. Third kind of database, social media, graph based database. Example, Neo4j. People are there on social media platform. Someone connects with someone, someone connects with other. So ये सारे connections रखना. And then recommend कि यार, if I am connected with A is connected with B, probably I would like to connect with B. ये होता है, yes or no? Instagram shows you these are the people that you might like to follow. These are the people that you might like to connect with. Yes or no? Everyone. GraphQL is different. वो उसकी बात नहीं करते हैं अभी. But graph based database जहाँ पे nodes and connections between nodes is important. So users and connection between user is important. So any social media platform would have some kind of a graph based thing behind it. Okay. Last होते हैं fast key value flows. कि यार मुझे एक ही चीज पे ऑप्टिमाइज करना है कि ये की के लिए वैल्यू दे दो, ठीक है, या इस की के लिए पूरा ऑब्जेक्ट दे दो. तो की बेस्ड सर्चिंग जहां पे वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट हो, वहां पे दीज काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स आर यूज्ड. इसका एग्जांपल DynamoDB ऑफ Amazon. इफ यू थिंक अबाउट इट, हमें यूआरएल शॉर्टनर में भी यही यूज करना चाहिए. यस और नो? इलास्टिक पे आते हैं. यूआरएल शॉर्टनर में भी यही यूज करना चाहिए. आवर मेन यूज केस इज टू गेट द लॉन्ग यूआरएल कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग टू शॉर्ट यूआरएल, है ना. मेन यूज केस तो यही है, की वैल्यू. तो दिस वुड बी अ वेरी गुड चॉइस फॉर आर सेटअप. तो मैंने पूरा कोड जो मैं अभी डालूंगा गिटहब पे प्रॉब्ली, दैट वुड बी ऑफ DynamoDB एज वेल, जहां पे मैंने DynamoDB से कनेक्ट किया हुआ है. आइडियली आई वाज थिंकिंग आई वुड डू इट टुडे, बट टाइम थोड़ा ज्यादा लग गया, so I don't think I'll be able to do it. But yeah, basically in this scenario, DynamoDB is a good choice. Last one is when string-based searching is there. Google search. इतने सारे वेबसाइट्स हैं. Find the one that matches particular string. तो या फिर if you have search for hotels, Airbnb वगैरह पे, anywhere where you actually search by string, those kind of things can be optimized using Elasticsearch. ELK stack, right? What is the difference between MongoDB and DynamoDB as both are stated? Difference है, MongoDB में एक ऑब्जेक्ट में बहुत सारे की वैल्यू है. like it's a list of objects, every object has key value. DynamoDB में it's just की वैल्यू. डिफरेंस समझ रहे हो क्या? देयर इज नो कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ ऑब्जेक्ट या डॉक्यूमेंट, राइट. हाँ आदर्श, तो मैं उसको क्या करूंगा, आई पुट द गिटहब लिंक, राइट. आई शो इट क्विकली जो मैंने लिखा हुआ है, एंड देन प्रॉब्ली आई कैन गो अहेड एंड पुट इट ऑन गिटहब आल्सो. ठीक है. इतने डीबी है, हाउ टू लर्न ऑल. यू डोंट नीड टू लर्न ऑल. इसमें से जैसे ग्राफ वगैरह वेरी स्पेसिफिक है, टाइमलाइन इज वेरी स्पेसिफिक फॉर कंपनीज, तो दे टीच जनरली इफ दे हैव टू, राइट. यू शुड नो, यू शुड हैव नॉलेज ऑफ वन, यार एक से कैसे कनेक्ट करते हैं, एक से कैसे वर्क करते हैं. दैट शुड बी गुड इनफ. ओके. डिफरेंस इन स्ट्रिंग बेस्ड सर्चिंग डीबी एंड की वैल्यू स्टोरिंग. स्ट्रिंग बेस्ड में यार क्वेरीज आर लाइक कि ये स्ट्रिंग किसी सब स्ट्रिंग में आ रही है क्या, या ये रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन कहीं आ रहा है क्या, ऑल दीज थिंग्स, राइट. ओके, लेट मी गो बैक टू द अदर क्वेश्चंस. सो वी हैव टू मेक एपीआई इन फ्रंट ऑफ इंटरव्यू. जनरली नहीं होता यार ऐसा, एपीआई फ्रंट ऑफ इंटरव्यू में नहीं बनाई होती. दे वुड आस्क यू लॉजिक कंप्लीट कर दो, डेटा स्ट्रक्चर वाला पार्ट मोस्ट लाइकली, राइट. But they can ask you some theoretical background question or in-depth questions, right? So you should have done it before. Is that MongoDB? I have listened to all of these database for the first time. ये सब use होते हैं हर इंडस्ट्री में. All of them are very common. DynamoDB is very common. Elastic is very common. Snowflake is very common. ये सभी I think बहुत common है. ऐसा नहीं होता यार सोहेल, इतना नहीं होता है कि एक specific database आना चाहिए. They would prefer that for experienced candidates little bit, but ऐसा नहीं है specifically. ठीक है. And these could be learned very easily. It's not a huge thing. In fact, a lot of them we are doing in the course that I also talked about. MVC backend structure है, तो view क्या है इसमें? So the layer responsible for sending UI back in a way, वो पतली सी layer which is responsible for sending back. Which course? यार मैंने बोला था अभी backend और पूरा हम course कर रहे हैं उसका. Node, Nest, AWS, Kafka, डॉकर, क्यूबरनेटीज, जो मेजर जितनी भी टेक्नोलॉजीज और टूल्स होते हैं विच आर वेरी कॉमन दीज डेज, स्टेट ऑफ द आर्ट बन गया, उसका एक कंबाइंड कोर्स, ताकि यू कैन लर्न ऑल ऑफ देम. तो मैं शेयर कर दूंगा जो तुम्हारे यूआरएल शॉर्टनर वाला ग्रुप था उस पे. आई टीच, आई बी टेकिंग इट. ओके. इट इज रिकमेंडेड फॉर फ्रेशर्स एज वेल एज एक्सपीरियंस, क्योंकि थोड़ी हायरिंग जो शिफ्ट हो रही है, वी टॉक टू अ फ्यू कंपनीज इन द पास्ट, सो दे आर सीइंग यार कि दीज थिंग्स विल बिकम कॉमन गोइंग अहेड. लाइक डीएसए तो पूछेंगे, but they would ask these kind of specific कि यार थोड़ा सा cloud में experience हो, थोड़ा सा you have explored Elasticsearch, you would have explored GraphQL, all that things, right? तो वैसा हो रखा है, ठीक है। टाइमलाइन इसकी ऐसी यार 15 अक्टूबर से स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, 3 मंथ का रहेगा, 3 to 4 मंथ का, ऑल लाइव, वीकेंड लाइव क्लासेस होंगी। एंड हाँ, उसमें हर चीज का एक प्रोजेक्ट एक्सपीरियंस होगा कि एक हर वीक एक प्रोजेक्ट करेंगे छोटा मिनी इसी की तरह, एंड विल बिल्ड इट एंड टू एंड, पुटिंग इट इन द रेलेवेंट टेक स्टैक, ठीक है। तो इस तरह का डिफाइन किया है, कूल। सो आई थिंक ये सब कवर हो गया। वन मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट that is very common in industry is concept of middleware. Middleware पता है क्या होता है? How many of you are aware of thing called as middleware? So someone asked me also, यार कि what is the guarantee that whatever the user is putting here, that is a URL. What if I put ABCD and I ask you to shorten it? हो सकता है yes or no, everyone? Or what if I put a huge string? फिर वो वहां जाएगा, memory exceed कर देगा, things will break, right? Or I'll put it in the map, huge string, memory exceed होगी, or I can keep on hitting it with different strings who would make sure कि यार मैं अगर 15 बार 1 सेकंड में हिट कर रहा हूँ तो I should be blocked. Who would make sure all of this, right? So for all of this we define certain middlewares. So they are like checks and balances in between client and server. कि client जो भी भेज रहा है, I will sanitize all of it and give only the clean things to the backend to run. ये पार्ट समझ रहे हो क्या? What is the role of middlewares? So sanitizing the client input. हाँ, उसमें rate limiting, body size limiting, making sure that it's a URL, making sure that it's not empty, all that stuff. So everything that you can think about कि यार एकदम sanitize करके proper input backend तक आए. If anything is bucker, this middleware will handle all of that. Does this make sense? What is the idea of middlewares and what are it used for? तो अभी मैं क्विकली क्या करता हूँ, एक मिडलवेयर और अपना डीबी इंटीग्रेशन दिखा देता हूँ जो मैंने पहले से लिख रखा है, राइट? एंड वी कैन क्विकली वर्क ऑन इट। तो डीबी एज वेल एज मिडलवेयर एक बार क्विकली देख लेते हैं। आई विल ट्राई टू वॉक थ्रू द मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द कोड, स्क्रैच से नहीं लिख रहे हैं बिकॉज टाइम पॉसिबिलिटी है थोड़ी सी। तो लेट्स लुक एट दिस ऐप डॉट यूज शॉर्टन। तो यहाँ पे इफ यू सी आई हैव माई 2 APIs, shorten वाली API, retrieve long URL API, the same APIs that we wrote. Yes or no? यही 2 API लिखी थी, shorten and retrieve. Can I get a yes? हमारे कोड में भी, right? Okay. So what I have said, app.use a middleware for shorten. ठीक है? ये middleware क्या कर रहा है? I am saying, I am checking, is the long URL in the body a valid URL? तो एक validator करके लाइब्रेरी मैंने इंस्टॉल करी है that validates different things, that it's a text. If you look at the different functions of it, it can validate almost anything. Validated, blacklist, contains, is alphabet, is base 58, right? Is credit card, is date, so on and so forth, right? तो इसी का एक फंक्शन है to check if it's a URL or not. So that I've used. So I'm saying, if validator says it's not a URL, then already from here, from the middleware itself, will return invalid URL. ये सबको समझ में आ रहेगा, everyone? Yes or no? This much question. If validator says it's not a URL, it's already not a URL, right? Otherwise, you call the next middleware. तो middlewares कैसे वर्क करते हैं? It's like a stack. एक के बाद एक, एक के बाद एक, एक के बाद एक. So you run the first one. First one को लगा सब ठीक है, वो अगले पे पास कर देगा. उसको लगा सब ठीक है, it will pass to the next. Final middleware will pass to the actual API. ये आइडिया समझ में आ रहेगा. So you can keep on writing different app.use, app.use, app.use. They'll be all your middlewares one after the other. Then at the end they'll pass it to the actual API. ये idea clear हो रहा है क्या? How middlewares are structured? Small app.use functions for checking different things. For example, this middleware checks if it's a valid URL or not. There could be a middleware that checks length is not very high. Another middleware that checks this user has not sent too many requests. So on and so forth. ये समझ में आ रहेगा सबको? What is next? Next is when you feel सब ठीक है, I'll pass baton in a way to the next middleware. यार अब तुम देख लो तुम्हारे तरफ से सही है क्या? समझ रहे हो क्या? Next का क्या यूज है? app.use shorten can we change the URL and how? हाँ, तो ये तुम क्या बता रहे हो? कौन से URL पे middleware है? If you don't specify anything here, then it will apply to every URL. But retrieve long URL में हमें long URL थोड़ी चेक करना है, इसमें तो हमें short URL मिलेगा. right? So that is why this is only for shorten. ये समझ रहे हो क्या? That why we have only put it for shorten, क्योंकि लॉन्ग यूआरएल को वैलिड यूआरएल चेक कर रहे हैं, राइट? लॉन्ग यूआरएल तो सिर्फ शॉर्टन में है, इसमें नहीं है, रिट्रीव लॉन्ग यूआरएल में, है ना? तो यहाँ पे तुम स्पेसिफाई करते हो किस एपीआई के लिए मिडलवेयर है एंड मिडलवेयर में क्या करना है, एंड व्हेन यू थिंक एवरीथिंग इज राइट जस्ट कॉल नेक्स्ट, प्लीज एक्सप्लेन नेक्स्ट अगेन, श्योर। मैंने ये बोला रिक्वेस्ट आई, पहले मिडलवेयर पे आई, पहला मिडलवेयर चेक कर रहा है यूआरएल है कि नहीं, ठीक है? इफ इट सॉ यूआरएल नहीं है तो इट विल डायरेक्टली रिटर्न यस और नो, ये सर में आया। इफ इट सीज दैट URL is not valid, it will return. If that is not the case, then it is a URL. तो मेरे तरफ से this is the valid request. So I'll call next middleware. Next is like एक linked list of middlewares है. I'm calling the next. कि यार अब तुम check कर लो. फिर that will call next. That will call next. Last one will call actually the API. तो ये हमारा actually यहाँ पे last है. So it will call this API. ये समझ में आ रहेगा. So we could have in a way created another middleware here. app.use shorten, let's say to check the size. तो इस next से ये वाला मिडलवेयर कॉल हो जाता, फिर जब ये नेक्स्ट कॉल करता then this would have been called. Do you understand? next 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 कैसे कॉल हो रहा है? Because it's a series of middleware. Yes or no? Yes, exactly. So before going to this particular API ये चलेगा. No, we don't pass anything. वो automatically रिक्वेस्ट रिस्पॉन्स पास हो जाता है, राइट? तो ये सब बैकग्राउंड में एक्सप्रेस हैंडल कर रहा है। एक्सप्रेस को तुमने रजिस्टर करा दिया है कि यार ये एक मिडलवेयर है, फिर ये अगला मिडलवेयर है, फिर ये अगला मिडलवेयर है, फिर ये हमारी एपीआई है। तो इट ऑटोमेटिकली लिंक्स ऑल ऑफ देम टुगेदर। यार पहले इससे रिस्पॉन्स देखता हूँ, इसने बोल दिया नेक्स्ट, तो अब अगले को कॉल कर देता हूँ, फिर इसने ठीक बोल दिया, अगले को कॉल कर देता हूँ, सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ। डज दिस आइडिया मेक सेंस? हाँ, जो नेक्स्ट होगा लाइक नीचे होगा वो कॉल होगा। करंटली देयर इज ओनली वन, सो नेक्स्ट विल कॉल the API itself. ठीक है? If there would have been 2, 3, one after the other, and then the API. Great. So that is how middlewares work. तो इस पे भी काफी डिटेल डिस्कशन हो सकता है. There are error handling middlewares. There are different kinds of middlewares, right? So lot of discussion can happen. ठीक है? These are like filters. कि यार C से कुछ रिक्वेस्ट यहीं पे ब्लॉक हो जाएंगी, कुछ रिक्वेस्ट फर्दर ब्लॉक हो जाएंगी, so on and so forth. Right? Let's look at DB. DB से कैसे कॉन्टैक्ट कर रहे हैं? तो हमने Dynamo DB से कॉन्टैक्ट किया. I've written 3 functions here. ठीक है? तो सबसे पहले क्या है? DynamoDB is with Amazon. तो AWS पे what I did, I tried to create a DynamoDB. ठीक है? Middleware specific for only request coming to that route. Yes. We can use middleware for logging as well. Yes. Definitely we do that. तभी तो मैंने बोला different kinds of middleware होते हैं. Logging के लिए, analytics के लिए, rate limiting के लिए, दुनिया भर की चीजों के लिए. Right? Cool. Let's look at this connection with DynamoDB. So सबसे पहले मैंने क्या किया है? AWS इंजेक्ट किया है, AWS की कॉन्फ़िगरेशन बनाई है फॉर आवर डीबी। तो यहाँ पे मैंने इसको हिडन रख रखा है बिकॉज when you create an account on AWS, you can look at your secret key, access key, right? And you have to put all of that here. तो एक मैं क्विक आर्टिकल दे दूंगा इसका to actually configure it, right? But essentially your AWS has your DynamoDB. So what I'm saying, get a new DynamoDB from AWS जिसका टेबल नेम URL है. Now these are the different functions. ठीक है? But basically we are integrating with DynamoDB table URLs. तो मैंने क्या बोला? Set long to short. कि long से short URL set कर दो डेटाबेस में. तो if you look at it, main thing जो यहाँ पे हो रही है, I'm saying DynamoDB में put this item. What is the item? URL table में short URL and long URL. ये चीज समझ में आ रही है? DynamoDB.put item, this short URL and this long URL. Yeah, Heather. So you can make a function and make that function be called from both the middlewares. है ना? कर सकते हैं ना? ये फंक्शन बना दो, दोनों जगह से कॉल कर दो. ठीक है? So यहाँ पे मैंने क्या बोला? AWS कॉन्फ़िगर किया, DynamoDB लिंक किया, ऊपर से जा रहा है. हाँ, आई न्यू. तो किसी ने यही बोला था कि तो हाँ प्रॉमिस भी बढ़ाना पड़ेगा यहाँ पे. तो दिस विल बिकम वेरी वेरी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड and it's I think would not be even possible to do it in such a short time. So probably we can take another class specifically regarding DynamoDB कि कैसे उससे इंटीग्रेट करते हैं, कैसे उसके साथ चीजें मैनेज होती हैं, राइट? तो अभी के लिए let's not get into all of this, है ना? I think that will be best. ठीक है? Can we move on? तो अभी के लिए क्विक चीज करते हैं दैट आई टॉक्ड अबाउट कि we'll write a front end, a quick small front end, or what we can do, we can simply put our code into AWS, right, and deploy it so that हम postman से उस deployed IP को hit कर सकें, है ना? ये करते हैं, ठीक है? Okay, so what I'll do, how many of you have ever worked with EC2 instances? EC2 instance के साथ work किया है क्या? Ever? No? Some of you have. Great. ठीक है. So let me first explain deployment होती क्या है. Anyone who understands what is deployment, what is the idea of when we say we are deploying a code? So the code that we have written is in our machine, right? हमारी machine पे है. अब do we expect कि the users that want data from us or want to contact our backend, they'll hit our machine? What do you think? क्या हम ये expect कर सकते हैं कि दुनिया भर के लोग जिनको हमारी वेबसाइट चाहिए वो हमारी मशीन से लेंगे वो वेबसाइट? No, right? So what we do, we put it in a forever running machine that are managed by Amazon, Google, these kind of companies. So AWS का जो cloud है, if you talk about it, so they have bunch of machines with them which they continuously run and operate, right? Which are publicly available. कि कोई भी उनको hit down, they'll make sure कि यार कोई और machine उसकी जगह ले ले. So all of this they have managed at their place. ये समझ में आ रहेगा. This is with AWS, this is with GCP or Google and all that stuff, right? So exactly what is deployment? Deployment is taking our code and putting it on these kind of machines, right? And making it publicly available. ये समझ में आ रहेगा. What is deployment? ठीक है? तो Amazon क्या बोलता है कि AWS पे you can create an EC2 instance. EC2 instance क्या है? उनकी एक machine, right? And what you can do is you can put your code, take your code, put it on this EC2 instance and keep it running. ये ठीक है क्या? Yes or no? ठीक है? तो exactly यही करते हैं. So I'll go to AWS. डोमेन पे आते हैं डोमेन भी बात कर लेंगे. So यार ये एक क्लास की चीजें नहीं है वैसे entire thing, but at least with this deployment your thing will be running and then you can close and complete the remaining stuff, right? Repeat EC2, sure. मैंने ये बोला कि हमारी मशीन से तो एक्सपेक्टेशन नहीं रख सकते कि इट सर्व्स अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल, दे हिट आवर मशीन, गेट द डेटा एंड ऑल दैट. यस और नो? तो इंस्टेड ऑफ दैट व्हाट डिड आई सेड कि यार वी नीड टू पुट आवर कोड ऑन एन ऑनलाइन मशीन, एन ऑलवेज रनिंग ऑनलाइन मशीन, एंड दिस प्रोसेस इज नोन एज डिप्लॉयमेंट. ठीक है? अब Amazon ने क्या किया उसके लिए, देयर आर लॉट ऑफ मशीन्स विद देम, दे से यू कैन टेक अ पर्टिकुलर इंस्टेंस एंड कीप इट रनिंग. तो ऑलरेडी मैंने यहाँ पे एक चला रखी है, बट आई विल क्रिएट अनदर वन. So for example, if you just search for EC2 here, EC2 instance, it directly gives you an option to launch an instance. This is like launching your own single server. So I'll click launch instance. It says, what do you want to name it? So let's say URL Shortener 2. ठीक है? I want Amazon machine only, 64-bit architecture. Most of these things you won't even need to touch, right? So most of them will be completely fine. One thing that you would need to touch, you would need to allow traffic from the internet to an endpoint here. ठीक है? We would want ना कि internet में कोई भी इसको hit कर पाए. So you would want traffic from internet to hit here, right? In fact, even HTTPS you would ideally want to be hit there. ये ठीक है क्या कि हमने ये ऑन क्यों किया है कि बाहर से HTTPS ट्रैफिक कैन कम टू आवर मशीन एंड ट्राई टू गेट सम डेटा. ठीक है? ओके, बाकी और कुछ भी चेंज करने की जरूरत नहीं है. यू कैन सिंपली क्लिक लॉन्च इंस्टेंस. ठीक है? क्या चाहिए इसको? लॉगिन क्रेडेंशियल चाहिए. ठीक है, इसको कुछ लॉगिन क्रेडेंशियल्स के लिए पेयर चाहिए जिससे ये जो ये हमें डाउनलोड कर देगा ताकि हम इस EC2 इंस्टेंस में जा पाए. ठीक है? तो मैंने क्या क्या किया है, जस्ट दोज हु आर फॉलोइंग विद मी with their Amazon accounts, go to EC2, click launch instance, allow HTTPS. It will ask you to create a pair, so create new pair, URL shortener to RSA रखेंगे, PM file and click create pair. तो एक PM file तुम्हारी डाउनलोड हो जाएगी. If you see here, this file is downloaded. Can everyone see that? फाइल दिख रही है क्या या नहीं दिख रही है in the downloads? No. ये काम करता हूँ, entire share करती हूँ. अभी दिख रही है क्या? recent downloads, है ना? तो यहाँ पे URL shortener 2.pem दिखा रहा है, the file that we downloaded, right? So basically now we can launch this instance simply. तो simply click से EC2 instance create करो, की डाउनलोड करो और अलाउ करो, लॉन्च करो, तो आर EC2 इंस्टेंसेस लॉन्च। ये ठीक है क्या? यस और नो? अब भी हमने अमेजोन से सिर्फ बोला है कि यार एक सर्वर मुझे दे दो, राइट? तो लॉन्चिंग एन EC2 इंस्टेंस सिंपली मींस टेलिंग अमेजोन कि यार मैं कुछ तो लॉन्च कर रहा हूँ, तो आई नीड अ मशीन। ठीक है, नाउ वी वुड नीड टू कनेक्ट टू दिस मशीन एंड ट्रांसफर आर कोड देयर। तो कनेक्ट टू इंस्टेंस पे जाते हैं। ठीक है, तो इट इज टेलिंग कि तुम्हें अगर कनेक्ट करना है, डू दिस, रन दिस कमांड SSH इनटू द मशीन। तो एक बार ये करने की कोशिश करते हैं। हमें URL शॉर्टनर 2.pem चाहिए। तो मैं क्या करता हूँ, हमारे डाउनलोड्स में पड़ी होगी ये फाइल, मैं वहां से अपने पास ले आता हूँ। ठीक है, MV कमांड से करा है मैंने। इफ यू वांट यू कैन ड्रैग एंड ड्रॉप एज वेल, बट एसेंशियली ये फाइल हमें यहाँ चाहिए। ठीक है, ये क्लियर है सबको? फाइल यहाँ चाहिए। अब विल लॉग इन, व्यू नहीं हो रहा, ओह माय बैड। तो मैंने क्या किया, डाउनलोड से मूव कर दी है मेरी ये फाइल करंट जगह पे। अगर MV कमांड नहीं पता है तो जस्ट ड्रैग एंड ड्रॉप एंड स्टिल इट विल वर्क। ठीक है, बट एसेंशियली ये फाइल मुझे यहाँ चाहिए टू कनेक्ट विद दैट EC2 इंस्टेंस। सो व्हाट आई से, आई विल रन इट्स कमांड। अमेजोन ने जो कमांड दी थी कि SSH करो। SSH कितने लोगों को पता है क्या होता है? SSH सिक्योर शेल SSH इज अपनी मशीन से बैठे बैठे किसी और मशीन से कनेक्ट करना एंड उसकी मशीन में कुछ काम करना, है ना? दैट इज व्हाट SSH इज। ओके, तो मैं क्या कह रहा हूँ, आई विल SSH इनटू अमेजोन की मशीन। उसमें SSH करने के लिए आई वुड नीड आइडेंटिटी। आइडेंटिटी मेरी इससे डिफाइंड है, इस परमिशन फाइल से जो उसने मुझे डाउनलोड करके दी है। ये लाइन सबको समझ में आ रही है? क्या करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, उस EC2 इंस्टेंस वाली मशीन में घुसने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं with this identity. So as soon as we click enter, you will see that it asks you to add your fingerprint. We click yes, and it says bad permission. Permissions for your are to open. It is required that your private key files are not accessible by others. ऐसा क्या हो गया भाई? वो अच्छा CS मॉड नहीं रन किया क्या हमने? माय बैड, CS मॉड रन करना पड़ेगा। 400 देना होगा ना? ठीक है, आई एम नॉट श्योर इफ CH मॉड भी सबको पता है क्या? हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू नो CH मॉड कमांड? CH मॉड क्या होती है? यस नो? सो हाँ, परमिशंस चेंज करने के लिए होती है। सो एनी फाइल और फोल्डर दैट यू क्रिएट इन योर एंटायर लैपटॉप दैट हैज सर्टेन परमिशन। फॉर एग्जांपल, कितने लोगों ने वो देखा है, लाइक इफ यू ट्राई टू ओपन अ फाइल इट सेज यू नीड एडमिन परमिशन टू मेक दिस हैपन। यस और नो? देखा है क्या ये लैपटॉप्स में? you try to open a file, you try to run a file, it says it requires administrative permissions, right? So that is because for every file there is a set of permission कि कौन लोग उसको रीड कर सकते हैं, कौन लोग उसको राइट कर सकते हैं, कौन लोग उसको एग्जीक्यूट कर सकते हैं, राइट? So with chmod command you change the permission of a file. So यहाँ पे you are changing the permission to allow only this user to access it, right? और इसके बाद we put SSH. If you actually see SSH के बाद we are into this Amazon Linux machine. कैन एवरीवन सी दैट? यस और नो? कि हम मशीन में जा पाएंगे? ओके, ठीक है। एक बात बताओ, व्हाट डू आई वांट टू डू इन दैट मशीन? क्या करना है मुझे मशीन में? आई वांटेड टू कॉपी पेस्ट माय प्रोजेक्ट, ट्रांसफर माय कोड। यस और नो? तो फॉर दैट देयर इज अनदर सिमिलर कमांड। SSH की जरूरत नहीं है हमें, तो वील एग्जिट फ्रॉम हियर। SSH के कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग ही इफ यू वांट टू डू फाइल ट्रांसफर देयर इज अ कमांड नोन एज SCP. SSH is for logging, SCP is for file transfer. So we'll say file transfer, identity is still URL shortener, transfer everything that is in this folder to your EC2 instance. ठीक है, SCP copy everything into this folder. तो उसने package.json कॉपी कर दी। अच्छा, हमारी परमिशन फाइल भी कॉपी कर दी जो नहीं होनी चाहिए थी आइडियली। package.log.json भी कॉपी कर दी और index.js भी कॉपी कर दी। नोड मॉड्यूल नहीं किए बिकॉज इट्स अ फोल्डर। इफ यू वांट टू डू अ फोल्डर यू हैव टू डू इट रिकर्सिवली, तो वो भी कर सकते हैं। ठीक है, बट हमें नोड मॉड्यूल्स चाहिए नहीं, हम वहाँ पे npm इंस्टॉल रन करेंगे तो अपने आप नोड मॉड्यूल्स बन जाएंगे, राइट? बट डू यू सी योर कोड गॉट ट्रांसफर्ड टू दैट पर्टिकुलर मशीन? यस और नो? इवन मैं लॉग इन करके दिखा देता हूँ। If I go into this machine now and I click ls, which is show me the content, I'll see package JSON, package log JSON, URL Shortener com, index.js, हमारा code. Yes or no? Does this make sense? Everyone? कि SCP से हमने अपना पूरा कोड वहां डाल दिया. ठीक है राहुल, हटा देते हैं. RM, ओके, रिमूव. ठीक है. अब we want node here, पहली बात तो, right? अभी the problem is, like if I try to even run npm install, I'm not sure if Amazon already, yeah, npm is not defined. So हमें यहाँ पे इस machine में node डालना पड़ेगा. So how do we do that? So let's see what Amazon asks us to do. So let's ask Amazon, download node in EC2 instance. ठीक है, तो वो कुछ सेट ऑफ कमांड्स देगा, वो हमें रन कर देनी पड़ेगी. तो इट विल से कि यार ये कर्ल कर लो. फिर तो मैं उसकी सीधा उसकी कमांड्स रन कर रहा हूँ. मैं तुम्हें भेज दूंगा. देखो, इन सब में दिमाग नहीं लगाना होता है. इन सब में जो Amazon का डॉक्यूमेंटेशन कहता है कि यार ये करो, यू ओनली डू दैट, राइट? यू डोंट गो हियर एंड देयर, डू sudo apt whatever, राइट? सो इट इज जस्ट सेइंग कि ये 3-4 स्टेप चलाओ एंड इट विल स्टार्ट रनिंग. तो आई थिंक इट शुड रन नाउ. सो अब वी कैन डू npm install like we normally do, and we can do npm start, or we were doing actually node index.js and our server is running. ठीक है. हाँ, नहीं करेगा यार कृष्णा. ऑटो पे वैसे भी इंडिया में अलाउड नहीं है. ऑटो पे के लिए लाइक मैंडेट ही खत्म हो गया इंडिया में. रिमेंबर दैट, राइट? हाँ. सो डेवऑप्स टेक्निक है, वही तो कर रहे हैं. तो व्हाट वी डिड, वी पुट आवर एंटायर कोड into the machine. We did npm install and we started the server. ये समझ में आएगा सबको? Yes or no? How did it happen? ठीक है. Server is running. But now the question is, यार मैं तो फंस गया यहाँ पे. I am inside this and server is running. If I stop, तो server बंद हो जाएगा, है ना? Others, developer, DevOps, ऐसे generally most of the companies do not have differences. कि यार ये developer है, ये DevOps है. At least the companies that are hiring today, they don't have this kind of distinguishing. Only top tech have that kind of distinguishing, which are not hiring at the current point, right? Is using EC2 instance free? Yes, free tier wali hai, so you can go ahead and use it. Okay, great. So server is running, but the point is कि यार सर्वर जो है वो बंद कैसे करके मैं बाहर कैसे जाऊं इस मशीन से, राइट? तो फॉर दैट आई हैव टू यूज pm2. So install pm2. pm2 will keep on running it on EC2. pm2 पता है क्या? pm2 is a tool. It's a process management tool. Okay. So what I'll do on this machine, I'll say npm install pm2 globally. कंट्रोल जी से चल जाता है क्या? आई एम नॉट श्योर. मतलब मैंने एग्जिट फ्रॉम हियर, तो प्रोसेस कैसे वर्क करते हैं? मैंने कुछ प्रोसेस स्पॉन किया. इफ आई एग्जिट, तो ऑटोमेटिकली इसको किल करेगा ना मशीन. इफ आई डोंट लैंड इट ओवर टू समवन एल्स. दैट इज हाउ प्रोसेस इज वर्किंग. सो आई एम नॉट रियली श्योर इफ कंट्रोल जी से चल जाएगा. तो बेटर आइडिया इज pm2 से. तो आई से pm2 स्टार्ट index.js. ठीक है. अब ये रन करता रहेगा और मुझसे अलग कर दिया इसने. लाइक pm2 ने ये प्रोसेस इनहेरिट कर लिया, तो आई कैन सिंपली एग्जिट फ्रॉम माय मशीन. ठीक है. दैट इज द आइडिया ऑफ pm2. तो pm2 इज बेसिकली अ टूल, process management tool. The idea is that you run it separately and pm2 inherits that process which is running. ठीक है. तो डीमन होता है इसका. डीमन और इससे भी कॉन्सेप्ट भी होते हैं. यू कैन रीड अबाउट इट. मतलब बहुत कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं इसमें जो डीप है. सो वी कैन नॉट कवर एवरीथिंग, बट या ठीक है. सो आई एम एग्जिटिंग. तो अब मैं वहां पे अपना सर्वर चला कर आ गया हूँ. अब हाउ डू आई एक्सेस इट फ्रॉम आउटसाइड? तो एक लास्ट चीज उसके लिए करनी पड़ेगी. सो दैट लास्ट थिंग वुड बी टू मेक श्योर कि यार हमारी जो इंस्टेंस है दैट इज पब्लिकली अवेलेबल. सो आई गो टू दिस इंस्टेंस. I'll go to its networking. And एक सेकेंड ना, कहाँ पे था? सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप्स में. आई थिंक सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप्स में यू गो टू दिस पर्टिकुलर मशीन एंड देन यहाँ पे यू हैव टू ऐड. सो या एक बार मैं दिखा देता हूँ दोबारा से. सो वी गो टू बेसिकली सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप्स. सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप्स में तुम्हारा जो लॉन्च विजर्ड है, जो तुम्हारी EC2 इंस्टेंस है, उसका एक सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप होगा। उसमें यू एडिट इनबाउंड रूल्स एंड ऐड अ रूल सेइंग कि यार जो भी रिक्वेस्ट मेरी 3007 था ना, 3007 पे आ रही है, उनको अलाउ कर दो, अलाउ इट फ्रॉम एनीवेयर एंड सेव। ये क्यों है? EC2 इंस्टेंस रन हो रही है, बट मुझे 3007 पे बाहर से रिक्वेस्ट अलाउ करनी है, तो मैं कैसे करूंगा? आई हैव टू गो टू इट्स रूल्स एंड सेट कि यार 3007 पे जो भी रिक्वेस्ट आ रही है फ्रॉम एनीवेयर आउटसाइड इन द वर्ल्ड, अलाउ देम। ठीक है, तो दैट इज द लास्ट पार्ट। अब जो इस EC2 इंस्टेंस का IP है, दैट कैन बी हिट। तो ये उसका IP एड्रेस है, आई कैन डायरेक्टली हिट इट। तो इफ आई गो टू पोस्टमैन, पोस्टमैन में अब इंस्टेड ऑफ हिटिंग लोकल होस्ट विल हिट दैट पर्टिकुलर IP। shorten and give the long URL and send, and it gives me the shorten URL. Can you see that? ये IP जो था वो EC2 इंस्टेंस का था। अब फ्रॉम एनीवेयर आउटसाइड आई कैन हिट दैट पर्टिकुलर IP। तो स्टेप्स क्या थे बेसिकली? फर्स्ट, EC2 इंस्टेंस लॉन्च किया। सेकंड, उसकी एक की डाउनलोड हुई थी, तो उस की के हेल्प से SSH करके देखा। फाइल्स ट्रांसफर करनी तो SCP किया, फिर नोट डाला, उसमें PM2 डाला, सर्वर चलाया और बाहर आ गए। ठीक है, सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप में जाके वहां पे अलाउ किया कि कोई भी इस EC2 इंस्टेंस को हिट कर पाए। एज सुन एज वी डिड दैट, उसकी IP से वी कैन रन आवर सिस्टम। ये स्टेप सबको क्लियर हो रहे हैं कैसे कैसे चला डिप्लॉयमेंट का प्रोसेस? मतलब इट्स नॉट वेरी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड ऑनेस्टली, थोड़ा सा रश हुआ है अभी लास्ट में, बिकॉज वी हैड लेस टाइम, आई डोंट डिडंट वांट टू एक्सटेंड इट बियॉन्ड 10, 3 आवर्स हो गए ऑलरेडी। सो या, तो बेसिकली विल पॉज हियर। आई थिंक ड्रैग ड्रॉप वाले पार्ट के लिए आपने कमांड से कैसे मूव किया? एमवी क्या करता है? इट मूव्स वन फाइल फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर प्लेस। एमवी फाइल टू द एक्चुअल प्लेस वेयर वी वांट टू मूव इट। ठीक है, एमवी कमांड है, राइट? सो मच कॉम्प्लिकेटेड। हाँ यार, थोड़ा सा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हो गया लास्ट में बिकॉज वी हैड लेस टाइम। हाँ, सो आई एम गोइंग टू टीच द एंटायर कोर्स, एंटायर एंड टू एंड कोर्स। ठीक है, कवरिंग एवरीथिंग। सो और इससे स्लोअर रहेगी थोड़ी स्पीड, राइट? दिस वाज रिलेटिवली फास्ट। सो आई शेयर द डिटेल्स, राइट? उसके बाद यू कैन कॉन्टैक्ट। अब क्या क्वेश्चन थे बता दो। आई ऑलरेडी न्यू द सर्वर थिंग्स, जस्ट DB and other backend stuff is where I have to wait. Okay, great. What was the command to move the file to SCP? SCP. SSH to login, SCP to move files. ठीक है, ओके एवरीवन। आई होप इवन इफ 100% समझ नहीं आया, 70-80% समझ में आया होगा, राइट? एंड डू ट्राई टू कोड इट आउट। ठीक है, मैं पूरे कोड को गिटहब पे डाल दूंगा एंड आई शेयर द लिंक अक्रॉस एज वेल, राइट? सो वो गिटहब का लिंक सबको भेज दिया जाएगा। तो रीड द एंटायर कोड, ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड इट। उसमें DynamoDB भी रहेगा, उसमें मिडिलवेयर भी रहेगा, उसमें फ्रंट एंड भी रहेगा, फ्रंट एंड इंटीग्रेट कैसे हो रहा है वो भी रहेगा, राइट? So the entire thing, I'll put it up. So just go through it and see how it works. ठीक है, okay. How will you hide the keys in GitHub? Good question. तो मैं वहाँ अपनी keys नहीं डालूंगा, but I'll mention कि क्या की रखनी है, right? What is the way to do that is using environment and secrets. GitHub secrets होते हैं, GitHub hook होता है जिससे we do CI/CD, right? Even ये सब भी है कोर्स में। It's a huge course. तो अगर सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट से डर लगता है, तब तो इट विल बी अ वेरी गुड आइडिया कि पूरा एंड टू एंड समझने के लिए यू कैन गो ahead and do it. How many hours per week? जनरली 4 to 6 आवर्स रहेगा यार। 2 दिन वीकेंड या 3 दिन वीकेंड, मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स। ठीक है, लाइक 3 दिन बेसिकली, या तो फ्राइडे या मंडे इंक्लूड करके 3 days a week या 2 days a week रहेगा। एंड डिपेंडिंग ऑन कि उस वीक का प्रोजेक्ट कितना बड़ा है कितना छोटा है, इट विल ऑल बी थ्रू प्रोजेक्ट बिल्डिंग, राइट? ओके एवरीवन, रात में रहेगा यार, 8 to 10, 8 to 11, 9 to 12, दीज काइंड ऑफ टाइम्स। हाउ मेनी प्रोजेक्ट्स यार? 3 महीने। तो मान के चलते हैं 1 महीने में अगर हम 2 मिनी प्रोजेक्ट्स भी करते हैं तो 5-6 प्रोजेक्ट्स तो हो जाएंगे। एक एंड टू एंड साथ साथ बिल्ड करते रहेंगे बड़ा वाला, बाकी इस तरह के मिनी प्रोजेक्ट बहुत सारे बना लेंगे, राइट? ओके एवरीवन, बाय, गुड नाइट।